Hello. How are you all doing? How are you all feeling? Lando, watch how Perez wins. Maybe you're from the future. Are you from 2026? Uh, hello, hello. Hello, Sarah. Hello, King Fusions 6262. Hello, Pixel. Christian, how's it going? Are we ready for some Qatar Grand Prix action? I mean, Max Verstappen said it himself. He thinks there's going to be fireworks into turn one. He's part of those fireworks. So if Max Verstappen is saying there's going to be fireworks, there's probably going to be fireworks. It is going to be tense, isn't it, between the top runners and everyone else just there to witness it by the looks of things. Like George Russell effectively just saying he's there to pick up the pieces if he needs to. You know, last time Max Verstappen and Lando Norris came together was Austria, and George Russell was the man to be there to pick up the pieces. So I have to wait and see. Hello, Rooster. Hello, Teen. Oh, God, loads of hellos coming through. I've missed them. Hello, Neo, somewhere. Nils, maybe? I missed them. I'm sorry. They went so quickly. How are we feeling? I'm feeling less nervous than yesterday, which feels weird. Maybe the nerves will hit me as we get closer to it. Like, I just really want a McLaren world champion. That is all I'm asking for in my lifetime. I would like to see a driver win the championship for McLaren whilst being a Formula One fan. I know that Lewis Hamilton did it. It was a while ago. I wasn't really a fan of the sport at that time as much. I'd seen bits and pieces of it here and there. Now it is my life, my blood, everything I do. I just want to see a McLaren champion. And then I'm done. And then I'm done, you know. I just want the one McLaren championship in my lifetime. That'd be great. Then I'm down for taking a more sort of neutral approach. Or am I? Do I just want more? Once you get one, then I want two. Lando will win. He wants Oscar or Max as World Drivers' Championship. I bet £200,999 that Max will crash. I mean, Max is the one that can't really afford to crash the most. Could argue that's Lando, to be fair, as well. But Max Verstappen needs the points, right? He cannot deal with a DNF. He is 25 points behind Lando Norris. And I think if Max Verstappen DNFs, obviously Lando likely to get a point, so would move him outside of range. But even if both of them DNF, I don't know how many wins they've each got. I think, again, Max Verstappen can't win the championship, right? If they both DNF and both get 0 points. Oscar will be the world champion. I mean, most people would have said that post Zandvoort, right? But now it's looking very much like it's going to go to the other McLaren driver. Shall we talk about it? In fact, we're a little bit early to it, but I did put together a graphic. Bang. Oh, I'm to the left. Let me find this. Let me move myself across. Don't know how I managed to move myself out of frame, but there we are. Let me move myself across. Boom. If Lando Norris gets first place, world champion. Done and dusted. Easy as that, right? Just get over the line, Lando. Make sure you win the Grand Prix, and then you are world champion. That's pretty straightforward, right? We can't really do too much more with that. If Lando Norris wins the race, it is done. Second place is more interesting. If Lando Norris does come second in this Grand Prix, which is where he is starting this Grand Prix from, he will only win the championship if Piastri is fourth or lower. I just can't see that happening. Or Max Verstappen is third or lower. I could see Max Verstappen coming third. I don't know if I can see Oscar Piastri coming fourth in this one. He was very, very quick in the sprint race and managed to win the sprint race yesterday and has got 2 pole positions to his name this weekend. Feels like Piastri unlikely to come fourth or lower. Then if Lando Norris does lose out to Max Verstappen, say he comes third in this Grand Prix, he needs Verstappen to be fourth or lower and Piastri to be fifth or lower in the standings. I'll be honest, I can't really see Lando Norris finishing outside of the top three. I think he's going to be on the podium, all being well, and no kind of random smashes into the barriers or hitting into one another or punctures because of tyre wear. I think Lando Norris will be in that top three. So that is what Piastri and Verstappen have to do to keep themselves within contention. If they lose the race, it is done. If they can keep Lando Norris at bay into at least second or third place, then they can both remain. Well, actually, second place they can't, because surely that would mean at least one of them has missed out in one way or another. So realistically, if we want a triple header title fight going into the final round of the season, we kind of need Max Verstappen to do Max Verstappen things. We need Max Verstappen to get past Lando Norris, maybe even put Lando Norris off enough that he allows one of the Mercedes cars to sneak by as well. And then we've got Lando Norris under real pressure, right? Lando Norris then needs to maybe make a move, needs to make an overtake, or he is losing ground. He will still be leading the championship, but he'll be losing ground to those two guys behind him, and making Abu Dhabi a much more of a spectacle for everybody. But Lando hate is forced, but Piastri is equal to Lando, in my opinion. I think certainly this weekend, Piastri has come back to his form. He did just have a few weekends, didn't he, Piastri? Like, well, I say a few weekends. It was a good sort of 6-race stint, kind of Baku onwards until this weekend, where he just did not look comfortable inside of that McLaren car, did not look happy of how the car is balanced, and just couldn't get the pace that now seems to be back once again. Like, that pole position lap from him yesterday was phenomenal. Like, one of the best laps you are going to see. If you watch the onboards of Oscar Piastri's pole lap, he gets every single millimeter out of that car. Like, he is very, very impressive. And you can just see his confidence is back once again. So Piastri looking very, very good this weekend. But as I say, Lando Norris can win the championship. If Lando Norris finishes 9th or lower, then of course it does continue on to Abu Dhabi, because he cannot get himself above 25 points from Oscar Piastri. Even if Oscar Piastri finishes outside of the points, he is 22 points behind his championship rival and teammate. Fun fact, since 2018, everyone who has won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the next season, they've won the championship. Is that so? That's a very interesting fact. Well, Lando Norris will be looking at that and licking his lips, because Abu Dhabi went really wrong for both Piastri and Verstappen last year, mainly because Verstappen hit into Oscar Piastri at the start of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2024. So it's looking like the favor is in Lando Norris's favor. The title is in Lando Norris's favor for now. When is the race starting? It's starting in 51 minutes. 51 minutes from where we are right now. But they are the variations on the Lando Norris championship that could see him lift the championship today in Qatar, or see it roll over into Abu Dhabi in a week's time and see Lando Norris with another 7 days to wait until he possibly lifts his first World Drivers' Championship. Could also then be his teammate Oscar Piastri that manages to do it, or even Max Verstappen for the 5th time in his Formula One career. It would be an incredible, like, as a McLaren fan, I kind of want it to be done and dusted today. I want Lando Norris to win this race. I want Lando Norris to win this race and just have this championship sealed up. Like, as a McLaren fan, it's then done. We've got it. It's in the bag. Take it home. 2026. Welcome. But as a Formula One fan and as someone who, you know, enjoys the drama of the sport, going into Abu Dhabi, a 3-way title fight would be the absolute dream, right? It's what we kind of saw as kids. I remember the 4-way title fights. What was it? Hamilton, Webber, Vettel, and Alonso going into lots of title battles. Was that 2010s coming to mind for me? Like, I just remember that one being a real substantial memory in my Formula One days. I think if we could go into another decider in Abu Dhabi, that would be absolutely amazing. In the pre-race show, Zach seems to be more afraid of Max turn one than own intra-team battle. Well, yeah, of course he will be, because he can't really control Max Verstappen in the same way. Not that he can control his drivers, but he can talk to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri beforehand and sort of say to both of them, look, this is how we're going to play it. This is what it's going to look like. Don't do anything stupid. And they can sort of, well, they can say to him at least whether they'll stick to it once the time actually comes. That's a different question, but they can say to him in the garage at least, oh yeah, no worries, like we'll leave each other alone. We know the limit between the two teammates, etc., etc. Whereas Zach Brown cannot talk to Max Verstappen. He is in a different team. And also Max Verstappen is known to be aggressive in nature. Let's put it that way. I think we've seen Max Verstappen go for moves that maybe other drivers wouldn't think about going for. If Lance wins the race, I will donate $500. There's no... Why make a bet when there's no jeopardy, you know? This season is actually 2003. Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a... It's an odd one, isn't it? Because the best driver, I do think, has been Max Verstappen. Like, give or take a couple of mistakes here and there. You could point at Spain and Silverstone, maybe. I think Max Verstappen's been pretty flawless in terms of his driving. Say that Lando Norris has also been quite unlucky at points. You could say that the DNF or the disqualification, last time out in Vegas, not really his fault. Like, the team had just set the car up slightly wrong. The DNF in the Netherlands also. I know you can argue like he has to look after the engine and things like that, but it was also quite unlucky to get a DNF like that, because we don't see that in modern Formula One, really. Like, the cars are pretty bulletproof nowadays. But you could argue, yeah, Lando's kind of been a little bit unlucky. Plus, he's thrown away a few points himself, right? You could look at Canada, where he smashed into the back of Oscar and be like, that is all you, Lando. Like, you have cost yourself there. So it is interesting. Like, there's definitely been ebbs and flows throughout the season. In fact, I can share with you this little graphic here that we talked about the other day. Like, this just goes to show those ebbs and flows throughout the season. It started off really strong for Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. They were clear of Max Verstappen in the first 7 races. Verstappen had sort of shining lights, didn't he? There were a few races at the beginning of the season where it was like, well, maybe can he get himself back in it? China, where he... No, was it China? Sorry. Japan, where he won the race, wasn't it? Japan, where Max Verstappen came out on top. And we were like, okay, Max Verstappen's at least keeping himself within touching distance. Maybe, just maybe, if the Red Bull car comes to life or things change, it can go his way. But then you look at that second part of the season, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri just slightly interchanging there. Lando Norris getting the slightly better form in that second 7 races by 4 points to Oscar Piastri. Piastri still leading the championship, though, and it did feel like it was very back and forth, didn't it? Felt like Lando would win a race, then Oscar would come back and win the next race, then Lando would win a couple, then Oscar would win one, and it was very back and forth between the two McLarens in that middle stint of the season, where we had the European races, right? Race 8 to race 14. That's where Max Verstappen really dropped off. You look at the fact he scored 124 points in the first 7 races, and then half of that, 63, in the next 7 races. And that was that stint of the season where I think most kind of said, maybe Verstappen is kind of out of it now. You look at that Spain incident. I think that doesn't happen if Verstappen is in a quicker car and in a better place in the championship. I think he's thinking about it a little bit more, whereas it's just that, like, the red mist descended on him, didn't it? The fact that Max Verstappen then drove into the side of George Russell. You know, he cost himself points there as well. The fact that Charles Leclerc also outscored Max Verstappen in that middle stint of the season just seems ridiculous to me now. Like, it seems such a long time ago that Charles Leclerc was actually picking up podiums inside of that Ferrari every now and then and doing a fairly decent job in the Scuderia. interesting that George Russell like maintained, right? He was 4th fastest in all of the season so far. Apart from these final few races, race 15 to 22, where George Russell and Max Verstappen have actually displaced the 2 McLaren cars. Like, it hasn't just been Oscar Piastri that's fallen off a cliff in terms of performance since the summer break. Like, Lando Norris also hasn't been right at that top caliber either, because Verstappen and Russell, I think the fact that Russell has also outscored Lando Norris since the summer break is pretty significant and shouldn't be forgotten about. Like, McLaren have said they gave up on developing this car at the summer break. They kind of had the Constructors' Championship in the bag. They probably also thought, considering where Max Verstappen was in those 7 races before the summer break, they also had the Drivers' Championship in the bag. So they decided to stop working on the McLaren car. And I think it's come back to bite them. You know, you look at Max Verstappen, the Red Bull team have said they kind of kept going, particularly with Max Verstappen's car over Yuki Tsunoda's, and they've pushed Max Verstappen to then picking up 179 points. That's better than Oscar or Lando were capable of doing in the 7 races at the beginning of the season, or the middle 7 races either. So it's very, very impressive from Max Verstappen, the fact that he has had that big of a jump. You look like nearly 100 points gained on Oscar Piastri. In fact, since Zandvoort, it has been over 100 points gained on Oscar Piastri, right? 104 points. He's crawled back into championship contention. But I think that segments the season quite nicely and just kind of shows you that all of these drivers have had their ups and downs, as much as a lot of people are flaming Oscar at the minute. Like, Lando also hasn't been amazing since the summer break. It's not been as easy for McLaren. I think Lando has just kind of been able to deal with it because he's got a bit more experience and is a little bit more comfortable inside of that car. Whereas Oscar Piastri, 82 points since the summer break, obviously added 8 to that yesterday, so 90 points since the summer break now. But still, like, not enough and nowhere near the 146, 138 that he was getting before the summer break. Love the fact that Lewis Hamilton also kind of clinging on there. Lewis Hamilton 53, 56. Again, was sort of fairly stable in his position. Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli amongst it. Very interesting as well, by the way. Has anyone noticed a name right in the middle of that pack? Like, it's very, you know, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen heavy, this list. George Russell is obviously there as well. Charles Leclerc, of course. Lewis Hamilton, the majority of the time. Oh, no, he's in all 3, isn't he, Lewis Hamilton? Kimi Antonelli's there a couple of times. Look who's just snuck in those 7 races before the summer break. Just goes to show how Stakes Sauber turned that car around. Look at that, 31 points from Nico Hülkenberg. Okay, it was a bit more of a mix in that middle stint of the season. And, like, you know, Antonelli had a bit of a nightmare. But still, Nico Hülkenberg, how on earth he snuck into like the top 7 drivers in the entire sport for those 7 races. Very, very impressive from Nico Hülkenberg nonetheless. And I appreciate F1 guy Dan put together this. I stole it from, I think, Reddit possibly, or maybe even Twitter. But show him some love as well. It was a very good graphic and I stole it from him. Lando's bottled it. I just don't think he has. He was only 13 points off Oscar in the first start of the season. Then he actually outscored Oscar in those 7 races prior to the summer break. And again, has kind of been unlucky at points. You know, you take away the DNF from Lando Norris, and he's above George Russell in this list. And actually, you take away the DNF and the disqualification from Lando Norris, and he's already won the championship. You take away the 10 points he lost in Canada, and he's won the championship comfortably. So it's kind of interesting that a lot of people think that Lando Norris has kind of bottled things, whereas actually I think he's been fairly consistent throughout the entire season. I think he's just had some ups and downs, like every single other driver has had as well. Little reminder about the tyres whilst we're here on this graphic. We might as well have a chat about them as well. I just can't see this being anything other than like a medium, soft race, to be honest, or soft, medium, maybe, depending on if you want to start on the softer compound tyre or start on the medium compound tyre. Like the hard compound tire, would you really want to go on it? You're only allowed 25 laps. I think it's weird as well, and I don't know if anybody in the chat can explain this to me. Why is it 25 laps on all 3 tire compounds? Like, surely the hard compound tire should last longer. Like, that's the whole point of the hard compound tire. So maybe you should be able to do like 20 laps on the soft, 25 laps on the medium, and 30 laps on the hard. Like, that would be interesting, maybe, in terms of the strategic things that the teams could do if it was different tire stints for different tires. And it feels like it should be that. But instead, Qatar has just sort of said, no, 25 laps across the board. Nobody can do more than 25. Like, it's just lock that in. Any tire compound, doesn't matter if you're on the softest compound or the hardest compound, you're only allowed to do 25 laps. Like, just feels like a little bit of a weird thing. I'd love to know in the chat if anyone knows why. I maybe, like, the only thing I can think of is that it's just easier to remember. Now they've just said, right, everybody, 25 laps, any tire, done. Yeah, I think, yeah, Oscar Pastry saying makes it too complicated. I don't know, though. Formula One is a complicated sport. Like, I feel like it's fine to be complicated sometimes. But then I suppose if you especially because I feel like a lot of people jump on at this stage in the season. Like, I even see it with these live streams and stuff like that. Towards the middle of the season, people do kind of dip away a little bit. They maybe catch the highlights or catch up on the races here and there. They don't really stick with it in the way that some of us do, and then kind of rejoin as the hype towards the end of the season gets going once again. So maybe for those people jumping back into Formula One that aren't like super dedicated to it, it would be a little bit difficult to understand. Starting on the soft, maybe pitting early, so you might lose on an early safety car. That's very true. Yeah, start on the medium tire, go a little bit longer just in case there is an early safety car. Feels like if there's going to be a safety car, though, it's going to be turn 1. It's going to be very early on rather than later on in the Grand Prix. Although you say that, you know, if the driver's starting on the soft compound tires, maybe do go a little bit too far and those cuts in the tires cause some issues, or there's some punctures that we see and somebody spins out or goes through one of the gravel traps, we could certainly see a safety car at some point. Then if you've started on the medium tire, you can pit under the safety car conditions. That's another thing that I think is playing into the favor of Oscar Piastri today. So if we do look at the grid, and we'll go through it in a bit more detail later, but if you look at the grid right now, Verstappen obviously will get the benefit of having the maximum strategy advantage over everybody else around him, because Piastri and Norris have got to worry about each other. Russell and Antonelli have got to worry about each other. Max Verstappen is there on his own, and therefore he can just go for the absolute optimal strategy. Like, they'll have done simulation after simulation after simulation, and Max Verstappen can just go for the perfect strategy for him. Piastri, though, if he can maintain the lead, of course, there's a lot of ifs here, but if Piastri can maintain the lead at the start of the race, then he has the optimal strategy at McLaren. So Lando Norris is going to be slightly put out by that, which is why I think Lando Norris is going to have to go for the lead early. He's going to have to get ahead of his teammate before the pit stops come around, because trying to do it within the pit stops, well, Piastri is always going to be able to dictate who and where and when and how these pit stops happen. So I feel like Lando Norris kind of has to get it done out on track rather than worrying about pit stops, where Verstappen doesn't. Verstappen can use the pit stops to his advantage. Maybe he doesn't get ahead of Lando Norris straight out of the gate. He can make up the position on Lando Norris later on in the Grand Prix with those 2 pit stops having to play, especially because we know that McLaren have not had amazing pit stops in the last few races. So they've got to do 4 of them, whereas really Red Bull have only got a properly nailed 2 pit stops. Like, no offense, Yuki Tsunoda, but if you have a slow pit stop, I'm not sure anybody at Red Bull is going to really matter that much, like, is going to really care that much substantially. Like, considering where Max Verstappen is in all of this, it's Max Verstappen that they're going to have their eye on. And then Russell and Antonelli is also an interesting one, because like Russell, I suppose Russell will have the ability to dictate anyway. I don't know, though. We saw in Mexico when Antonelli got ahead of his teammate and then Russell was on the radio like, why isn't he getting out of the way? And the team were like, look, you're racing each other. Your teammates, yes, he's inexperienced, yes, but doesn't matter. I think Russell there will also have that optimal strategy, which Lando Norris needs to be worried about. Like that's why I'm worried for Lando Norris in this, because everyone around, or the Piastri, Verstappen, Russell will have the optimal strategy. And then Lando Norris, as it stands, will have the slightly suboptimal strategy because he's going to have to work around Piastri, who is going to be able to dictate when he wants to come in. How much time until the race starts? 33 minutes. 33 minutes. Thank you for all the new subs. Yeah, a few subs coming through there and some followers over on Twitch as well. I think we have surpassed 700 followers on Twitch, which is insane. We're on 732 followers on Twitch. If you are on the YouTube chat, but maybe you have a Twitch account as well, you can follow us over on Twitch too. That'd be absolutely amazing. Also, if you've got Amazon Prime, by the way, like, you get a free Twitch subscription every month. And, like, you could just let Jeff Bezos keep that money. But I think he's got enough. So if you've got an Amazon Prime and you've got a Prime subscription, head over to the Twitch channel. Like, even if you're not a Twitch user, but you've got an Amazon Prime subscription, you should use that. And use it on me. Like that. You should definitely be using your Twitch Prime. And you should definitely be using it on our channel. And also, if you're joining us on the short stream, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by. Join us on the main stream, though. Main stream is where it is really at. Short stream's all right. Short stream's good. But, like, you know, up your attention. Get over to the mainstream. What are McLaren fans saying? I mean, as a McLaren fan, I would more than love just Lando Norris to win this race, win the championship, brush it under the carpet, go into Abu Dhabi, and it be done. I'd be very, very happy with that indeed. I'd probably lose my head. If anyone was here for, like, Miami last year where Lando Norris won it, you'll know. I can lose it if things go well for Lando Norris and McLaren. This year's been a little bit different because heart palpitations have been through the roof a lot of this time. And whilst we're here, if you could also leave a like on the stream, that'd be absolutely amazing. But we're about half an hour away. We'll talk through the grid a little bit later on. And we were talking through the tyres. And in fact, there was one more thing. Oh, yeah, there was one more thing that I wanted to show you, which was a little bit of a debate around the gaps between the drivers in qualifying. Because saw a lot of heat coming, like Yuki Tsunoda's way. And then I actually looked into it and I was like, Yuki Tsunoda didn't do horrendously compared to Max Verstappen in Q1. He was less than 0.3 of a second away from Max Verstappen. And I think that just goes to show, like, how competitive the grid is this year. I was so flabbergasted when I saw this. Like, Yuki Tsunoda is actually closer to Verstappen than Ocon is to Behrman or Hamilton is to Leclerc. And yet, Yuki Tsunoda qualifying in 16th place. Like, qualifying this year has been so good, like, so competitive. It is insane. The fact that the two RB boys are really close to each other as well, kind of who is going to get that seat at Red Bull next year, because Yuki Tsunoda does feel like he is going to fall away from it. Hadjar looking very, very good for it. Hadjar earlier on in the week saying that he knew what was happening next season, and, like, he just can't tell everybody yet because there's been no official announcement. Even Colapinto was out, but Stroll is still... Yeah, exactly. Well, Stroll and Colapinto, it's very similar gap. 0.456 and 0.460 between Gasly and Colapinto versus Alonso and Stroll. Just goes to show again, like, that gap between Alonso and Stroll is ridiculous almost every single weekend. Hamilton as well, though. Hamilton only 0.3 of a second off Leclerc. Like, go back a couple of seasons and 0.3 of a second behind your teammate is, like, that's fine. Like, that's okay. And you'd probably be able to sneak through into a Q2 session, and then you'd have time to be able to actually improve. But nowadays, if you're 0.3 of a second off your teammate, you're gone. Like, you just are gone. It is insane. Like Carlos Sainz as well. Like, that was Q2, to be fair. Albon did at least make his way through to Q2. But again, over 0.3 of a second behind Carlos Sainz, gone. You're going to be out. Like, 0.3 of a second is too big of a gap now. You need to be within 0.2, really. You know, Russell, Hulkenberg, Piastri, Hadjar, and then their teammates Antonelli, Bortoletto, Norris, and Lawson within 0.2 of a second is the only way to really make it through in qualifying. Even though Hulkenberg and Bortoletto both dropped out in Q2. But that just goes to show that the car's pace is there, right? Both of the stakes Albers dropping out in the same session at least goes to show, right, that's kind of where they are. You look at like Hamilton dropping out in Q1 versus Leclerc getting through to Q3. And the same with Gasly, like Gasly getting through to Q3, Colapinto dropping out in Q1. Like, that's damning for both of those teammates, really. And does not look good on their records as we go into the final race of the season. Although, as I say, everybody locked in for next season, apart from the Red Bull second seat and the 2 Racing Bulls cars. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll give a little update for those of you joining us a little bit later on what Lando Norris needs to do to win the championship. We did talk about it a little bit earlier, but I'll just run through it once more because there's a few more people in the chat now. So if Lando Norris finishes first, he will win the championship. It is done and dusted. Nothing to fight for come Abu Dhabi. If he finishes in second place, he needs Piastri and Verstappen to finish 4th and 3rd, respectively. And then if Lando Norris finishes on the podium in 3rd place, he needs Piastri and Verstappen to drop down even further to 5th and 4th, respective of one another. Lando Norris can still win the championship, believe it or not, if he finishes in 8th place. He just needs Piastri to finish outside of the points and to finish ahead of Max Verstappen. If he finishes 9th or lower, he cannot win the championship because at least Oscar Piastri will be within 25 points of the Briton. Am I British? I am indeed. But that is what Lando Norris has ahead of him. Didn't think he was going to be him who had the championship in his hands going into the final 2 races of the season. I still thought we would be at a point here where Piastri was 3, 4, 5 points ahead, and we'd be talking about the different permutations moving into Abu Dhabi. But no, Lando Norris, a sublime couple of race weekends for him, has meant that he is right up there, taking the championship lead in Mexico, then doing very well in Brazil again, just managing to put it where he needed to, right? Put the car in exactly the right spots. And actually, Lando Norris can win the championship if he just finishes 3rd in both Grand Prix. And when you've got 2 championship rivals and you've got to finish 3rd, unless, you know, a George Russell or a Kimi Antonelli really gets involved in it, it's going to be Lando Norris who takes the championship win. Why don't I go see the Qatar Grand Prix? I mean, not many people go and see the Qatar Grand Prix. It's one of the least attended Grand Prix, maybe even the least attended Grand Prix, I think, on the Formula One calendar. They pay a lot of people to go to the Grand Prix. It's the way that it normally works. Like, you'll see a lot of the celebrities out there in Qatar, but a lot of them have been asked to go rather than the other way around and paying for the privilege. Can you tell Russell and Yuki to kamikaze both McLarens? I mean, Yuki Tsunoda's going to struggle from where he's starting the Grand Prix to kamikaze and McLaren. It's going to be quite a blatant move if Yuki Tsunoda screams past, 12 cars to get anywhere close to the drivers towards the top end of the grid. Why do people not go? It's just not really an incredible Grand Prix to go and watch, to be honest. It's one of those, like, there's a little bit awkward to get to. It doesn't have the fan base yet out in Qatar. It's very, very hot. Like, there's a few things that just kind of play against it. Not being one of the most visited Grand Prix on the calendar. Like, you look at the grandstands in Qatar versus the grandstands in somewhere like Spa or Monza or even like Austria. It's just a very different vibe. It's a very, very different place, and a very different one. If they paid me to go, I would. Oh, yeah, I'd certainly go. Like, I can understand why Rio Ferdinand and Steven Gerrard are out there. If they're getting paid to go, they'd go. Like, I'd do the exact same thing. If they paid me to go, I'd go. But unlikely that I'm going to be paid to go, unfortunately. Oh wow! Thank you, Jefferson, for the cheer ones on Twitch. I still don't really know how Twitch works, if I'm honest with you, but I appreciate it. It's come up on the thing. Thank you so much. And the 6 viewers joining us on Twitch, appreciate it. Thank you so much. All those new followers. Didn't know I streamed on Twitch. Yeah. Well, it's only been a recent addition. I think it was about halfway through this season. We did start the Twitch streams too. Stuck at the Drivers' Championship board one final time before we delve into the grid just over 20 minutes out from the start of this one. We have got Lando Norris, 22 points to the good from Oscar Piastri. Despite Piastri winning the sprint race yesterday, Norris was still able to come home in 3rd place. So it was only a 2-point swing for the Australian. Verstappen, then 371 points, 25 points adrift of Lando Norris. If Verstappen finishes behind Lando Norris, he will be out of championship contention. So as much as Piastri can kind of finish in and around Lando Norris and still just about be there, it is Max Verstappen who really needs to finish in front of the Briton if he wants any chance of being in Abu Dhabi with an opportunity to win the championship. George Russell in a little bit of a no man's land. Like, we looked at the statistics throughout the season, George Russell has been pretty consistently the 4th fastest car out on track. He was 4th in terms of points scored across the entire first half of the season as well. Has actually outscored both of the McLarens since the summer break, but still finds himself in 4th spot at the moment. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton just waiting for this season to end in 5th and 6th place. Charles Leclerc, quite a distance from Lewis Hamilton now, actually. I hadn't realised quite how big of a gap that had become in the second half of this campaign, but Leclerc now 5th, Hamilton 6th, and Kimi Antonelli closing in on the back of Lewis Hamilton. 12 points for Kimi Antonelli to get ahead of the driver he replaced, and as much as Lewis Hamilton, I don't think would care, I think Kimi Antonelli certainly would. If he could finish above Lewis Hamilton in the driver's standings, that would be a pretty big statement from Kimi Antonelli in his rookie season of the sport. And a sport where, in a season where it went very wrong for him in the middle portion. Alex Albon's going to finish best of the rest. I know that Isaac Hadjar can technically still catch Alex Albon. If he wins both Grand Prix, he'll be on 101 points and he'll take 8th place from Alex Albon comfortably. But I can't see that happening, and I think Isaac Hadjar is going to finish in 9th place or lower. I would think 9th place, because looking at it, Hulkenberg, Sainz, do I think that they're going to be able to pick up the couple of points advantage needed on Isaac Hadjar? I think Hadjar will be quite strong in Abu Dhabi. We know the Racing Bulls car is usually pretty strong in Abu Dhabi, and Hadjar has been very strong there. He had a pretty poor F2 race there last year. I was going to say he was pretty strong in Abu Dhabi last year, but he had that problem where he stalled on the grid, didn't he? But he was very strong in F2 last year. He was in the championship fight up until that point, bless him, Isaac Hadjar. Nico Hulkenberg, 49. Carlos Sainz, 49. Fernando Alonso, 42. Moved himself above Ollie Behrman in the standings once again after the sprint race yesterday. Behrman down to 41. The fact that Behrman is on 41 and Bortoletto still stuck on 19 just goes to show that Ollie Behrman had 3 or 4 brilliant weekends in this second half of the season. Liam Lawson on 36, Esteban Ocon 32, Lance Stroll 32, Yuki Tsunoda 32. So 15th, 16th, and 17th place, all on the exact same points as one another. Tsunoda will be desperate to try and claw himself above, at least Liam Lawson, like, try and finish above at least one of the RB cars. Please, Yuki, like, I know it's been a tough season, but it looks bad when you finish below both of the sister team cars. And then Pierre Gasly, 22, Bortoletto, 19. Franco Colapinto, the only driver yet to score points, who has taken part in the majority of Grand Prix this year. And then in terms of the constructors' standings, McLaren have already won it. It is done. 770 points for them, almost double everybody else in the championship at the moment. Mercedes also looks to pretty much have second place done, specifically because George Russell and Kimi Antonelli starting in 4th and 5th place today and looking forwards rather than backwards. So I think Mercedes is going to consolidate second place in the championship. In fact, I think they can if they outscore Red Bull by, or even not even outscore, as long as they're, 25, 30, 43 points ahead of Red Bull. So they need to outscore Red Bull here by 2 points. And then they will have sealed second place in the constructors. And Red Bull also looking very likely that they will seal third place in the constructors, with Ferrari just flailing at the end of the season. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton disgusted with how it has raced here in Qatar so far this weekend. I'm not sure it's going to get that much better for them. And then Williams down there in 5th place, 122. Think that's kind of done as well. Oh my God, thank you so much for the super chat, Sally. Like and subscribe, please. Thank you. That is amazing. Massively appreciate that. Williams, where were we? Yeah, 5th place, 122 points, 32 points ahead of Racing Bulls. That is substantial. And again, I think kind of signed, sealed, and delivered for Williams there. Racing Bulls, 16 points to Aston Martin also feels like too big of a jump, but then it is all to play for from Aston Martin down. Just a few point swing between Aston Martin, Haas, and Stake Sauber could change 7th, 8th, and 9th place. Remember, there's tens of millions of pounds on offer for those teams. Like if Stake Sauber can score themselves, 7 points over 2 races, which isn't impossible. Especially Nico Hulkenberg was the 7th fastest man between races 8 and 14 of the season. We worked out earlier on today. So Nico Hulkenberg just needs 7 more points, or Gabriel Bortoletto, couple more points as well. And they could get above Aston Martin and get that team, as I say, tens of millions of pounds, moving up a couple of places in the constructor standings. Alpine look dead and buried at this point. In fact, they are dead and buried, right? Even if they manage to win this Grand Prix, it would only get them 25 points and they'd still be quite far behind. Like if Gasly wins both Grand Prix, so he gets 50 points, I would only be 72. So he'd still need Colapinto to get a point somewhere. And that just hasn't happened all season. So why would it happen in the final 2 rounds? Not that I'm expecting Pierre Gasly to win either. Here we go then. Shall we also move over to qualifying as it stands? This is our grid. Can I show the race, please? Sort of, but not really. But we are only a quarter of an hour away from the possibility of Lando Norris going on to win his first World Championships. He takes his spot for the national anthem. Of course, the national anthem starts 16 minutes before the formation lap. Lord only knows who made that decision, that like 16 minutes is the exact gap that we need between the formation lap and the national anthem of whatever place we are in. But they are the rules. All the drivers have to be at the front of the grid for it. All of the teams have to stop working on the cars just for a moment and stand for the national anthem. What is the Qatari national anthem? Have I ever heard it before? Other than a Formula One race? I don't think so. You going to pay for those streaming rights like $1 bajillion? Yeah, I can't remember how much it was. How much is Apple paying for Formula One in the US? It is an obscene amount of money, isn't it? It's like hundreds upon hundreds of millions of pounds. And that's only for like a couple of seasons. So unfortunately, I do not have the streaming rights that Sky have in the UK or Apple have now in the US, I think from 2026 onwards. But the national anthem is being played. There is George Russell alongside Lando Norris. There's a little bit of a weird interaction between them. Oh, well, I think it got overblown a touch, but where a journalist tried to tell George Russell that Lando Norris was saying that George put him off into turn one, and that's what ruined his final qualifying lap. Like, a journalist was almost trying to like stir the pot, I think, between Russell and Norris, not realizing that they're actually really good friends. And then they bumped into each other, and they obviously found out this journalist was just stirring the pot. And there was just a weird interaction between them. It was a very, very odd moment between Norris and Russell. Worth looking up, but just funny more than anything else. George Russell, though, is right there. Will he do his friend a favor? That's the thing. You know, they're friends when the helmets are off. If George Russell manages to sneak in front of Lando Norris, will he do his friend a favor and maybe shuffle to one side or make a mistake along the way somewhere in this Grand Prix? I don't think he will. I think George Russell will want as many points on the board as possible. 750 million for 5 years. It's not as bad as I thought it was, actually. I thought it was less than 5 years, but 750 million is still not something I've quite got in my pocket. I mean, if anyone's got, you know, a super chat in them and they'd like to get us closer to the 750 million that we need, that would be amazing. Or you can support us through other means. You can go over and support the Crash Abbey podcast through the Patreon that we've got over there, or just by watching everything. Like, just watch every video that I ever put out all the way through. Leave likes on it. It's the best way to support me. I think George was kidding, but Lando thought he was being serious and got annoyed. I think it was just a weird interaction between the two of them. I see. It was just funny to watch. Like, I think they kind of forget, or that journalists maybe kind of forget, or people kind of forget that actually Norris, Albon, Russell are all really, really good friends. Like, they've known each other for so long, and they spend quite a lot of time with each other outside of the Formula One tracks as well. So, in the same way that like Gasly and Leclerc spend loads of time with each other, and Leclerc and Sainz still spend loads of time with each other. Now, they all will have chats about what goes on, and I'm sure they know that the media is sometimes just got to be ignored, especially when it is getting towards the end of the season and tensions are high between those. Who do I think will win the race? I think Piastri has just been stunningly quick this weekend. I think it's going to be very hard for Lando Norris if he can't get ahead of Piastri straight away, because Piastri is going to have the benefit of the optimal strategy inside of the McLaren garage. Like, if you're the leading McLaren, you are allowed to dictate. We saw it in Monza, for instance, where Lando Norris was asked over the radio, like, if he was going to allow Oscar Piastri to pit before him, basically. And Lando Norris did at that time. But we could see something similar, where Piastri almost gets to dictate when Lando Norris gets to pit, and how his races run. You want to know something? I'm an F1 fan like you. I would imagine so. Like, otherwise, I'd question why you were here for the penultimate round of the Formula One season. But yeah, I think Piastri starting first, likely will finish first. Has had such good pace this season. Has Oscar Piastri has done a really, really good job at kind of reclaiming a bit of the pace that he had earlier on in the year, considering the pressure was so high on him to deliver this weekend. I could have easily found himself out of the title race, going into Abu Dhabi by a considerable chunk. Still could find himself out of the title race going into Abu Dhabi, but at least he can keep it a little bit in his hands, right? He's got the opportunity to outscore his teammate and do it, and actually is right there. Whereas if he'd have qualified down in 5th or 6th place, like we've seen him qualify in the last couple of races prior to Qatar, I think it would be championship over for him. So the pressure was on. Piastri delivered. I think he'll do it again from pole position. Lando Norris is an interesting one, starting on the second spot on the grid, on the slightly dirtier side, you could argue as well. It's going to have it's going to have Max Verstappen to contend with. We saw in Vegas that when Verstappen is alongside Norris, Norris often has eyes for the Dutchman and sometimes forgets his braking zones because of it. So Lando Norris, I think just needs to remain cool, calm, and collected, needs to not get baited into anything by Max Verstappen, because actually third place is good enough for Lando Norris. Like, if Lando Norris comes third in Qatar and then third in Abu Dhabi, he wins the championship. Like, there is no way of anybody else catching him, because that could only be a 20-point swing in Piastri's favor, for instance. If Piastri wins both races, that's only a 20-point swing in his favor if Lando Norris comes third in both races. And that still puts Lando champion by 2 points. So Lando just needs to remember that and actually think to himself, even if I drop down to third, that is fine. Like, I can deal with that. It's then if he gets baited into something by Verstappen, who's starting in third place, which then also costs him in terms of where George Russell is, or maybe even in terms of like Antonelli or Hadjar behind. I think that's the other thing playing massively into Lando Norris's favor, is the Ferraris are so bad. I think if it was a Charles Leclerc behind, in a Ferrari that was fairly decent, then it would be a very different story to an Isaac Hadjar behind, for instance. I think it's just a different... I know Isaac Hadjar is still very competitive and very quick, just doesn't feel quite the same, doesn't have the same emphasis behind it as if it was a Charles Leclerc he had to get past in a Ferrari car rather than an Isaac Hadjar in a racing bull. But I think, yeah, Lando Norris just needs to remain cool, calm, and make sure he doesn't get, like, even if he loses position to Verstappen, just kind of let it go. I think he can just let that one go. Then George Russell starting in fourth place. Is that, will George Russell do Lando Norris a favor? I don't think so. I think he'll be fighting for every single point that he can possibly get. We know George Russell is very, very competitive. He's a very different man when he's inside of the car versus outside of the car. And I think George Russell could play a little bit of a part in this championship. Obviously, if Lando drops down to fourth place, that is not good enough, because Piastri could have a big enough swing to then be within contention of, if Lando Norris then comes third in Abu Dhabi, he would no longer win the championship. And when Verstappen is still in the mix, that then becomes a problem for Lando Norris. So Norris needs to be okay with dropping to third, but not okay with dropping to fourth. Like, it's a little bit of a tightrope act that Lando Norris has got himself in this Grand Prix. Then Kimi Antonelli starting on the third row of the grid. Very solid qualifying from Kimi Antonelli after a very impressive Grand Prix in Vegas. I'm expecting big things from him. At least he's not starting from 16th place this time. Do I think he'll be able to, keep up with the likes of Verstappen and Russell ahead of him? Probably not. I think just because of the tyre management required here in Abu Dhabi. So I think it's going to be tough for Kimi Antonelli to move forwards, but certainly can stick to fifth place and again, like, close that gap on Lewis Hamilton in the driver's standings. So Kimi Antonelli will also want as many points as possible. And then Isaac Hadjar is starting in sixth place, best of the rest, trying to consolidate that ninth place in the Drivers' Championship. He did say at the beginning of this weekend that's kind of his goal for the last two rounds of the season. He really does want to hold on to ninth place. Would have hoped it was more, obviously, at the beginning of the season, but a rookie season where you're best of the rest except one, and that one being Alex Albon, who started this season on fire and was ridiculously quick compared to the rest. I think, if you're Isaac Hadjar, you can kind of take that. And actually, if you're Red Bull, you can be very, very impressed with Isaac Hadjar finishing ninth in the driver's standings. He could pretty much consolidate that with a good finish here. Carlos Sainz also running for that ninth place, though, just starting behind him. It's an all-Spaniard fourth row as Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso start in seventh and eighth place. They're both kind of fighting again for that best of the rest outside of Albon in the Drivers' Championship, but Alonso kind of said his season feels like it's a little bit done. He's more so looking at 2026 and what could happen there with Aston Martin, knowing that his career is also starting to come towards a close. Feels like 2026 will likely be Fernando Alonso's last season. He's kind of hinted at that pretty substantially. Unless things change dramatically, he will be out in 2026. And of course, a baby on the way now, Fernando Alonso. That has been confirmed by Italian media, I want to say, which seems odd considering he's Spanish, but there we are. The Italian media confirming that Fernando Alonso soon to be a father at the age of 44. And then finally, inside of the point scoring places, just about Pierre Gasly dragging that Alpine to a Q3. he's actually qualified fairly well this year as Pierre Gasly. I know he's only got 22 points on the board, but has actually been in Q3 more times than the likes of like Nico Hulkenberg, for instance, or Liam Lawson. Like, he's been in Q3 quite a few times as Gasly. I think it's 10 times across the season. But the race pace of that Alpine car just hasn't quite been there for all to see. He starts in 9th, and Charles Leclerc starting in 10th place. Hulkenberg, Lawson, Behrman, Albon starting 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. Yuki Tsunoda jumps up a place. He's starting 15th because of Gabriel Bortoleto dropping 5 places because of that grid penalty that he picked up for his move into Turn 1 in Las Vegas. Ocon starts 16th, Lewis Hamilton starts 17th, Stroll 18th, Bortoleto 19th, and Colapinto in 20th place. As we move to just a few minutes away from lights out here in Qatar, we've also got confirmation of tyre compounds now for the drivers at the start of this one, as the tyre blankets have to be taken off a few minutes before we get underway with the formation lap. So we have got the entirety of the top 10 on the medium compound tyre, which doesn't bode massively for there being, strategic advantages for going on different tyres. So all of the top 10 deciding that the medium is the best choice. Nico Hulkenberg zigging where everyone else has zagged, going on to the soft compound tyre at the start of the Grand Prix. So likely it'll be a soft medium run for Nico Hulkenberg. Maybe he'll pit a little bit earlier on, try and get a bit of an undercut going. And then hope that the medium tyre towards the end of the Grand Prix and track position possibly plays into his favour. Then Lawson and Behrman starting on the medium compound tyre behind. Alex Albon starting on the hard compound tyre. Not really sure why, other than the Williams team didn't really seem too happy with the pace of the car on the soft compound tyre. Alex Albon in particular really didn't like the pace of the car on the soft compound tyre. So maybe Albon is going for like a hard medium and just trying to stay away from the soft compound tyre altogether. That would be my guess in 14th place there for Alex Albon. Tsunoda starts on the medium. Ocon starts on the medium. Hamilton on the soft. Hamilton did a really good job at scything through a few cars at the beginning of the Vegas Grand Prix, maybe hoping to do the same thing again by going onto the soft compound tyre early on with that heavy fuel load, though. It's going to be tricky. And then Lance Stroll, Gabriel Bortoleto on the medium, Franco Colapinto on the hard compound tyre. Remember, of course, mandated pit stops here in Qatar. You can only do 25 laps on a set of tyres. Doesn't matter what compound it is, soft, medium, or hard. You are allowed 25 laps, and that is all due to safety. Basically, though, big cuts being found in the Pirelli tyres because of just how difficult this circuit is on the tyres. Like, the asphalt is very, very abrasive, and also a lot of curbs. They did actually change the curbs after we raced here a couple of years ago, but they're still not incredibly forgiving when it comes to these Formula One and Pirelli tyres. So they have given themselves a little bit of wiggle room and said to everybody, maximum 25 lap stints. That does mean we're at least going to see 2 pit stops from everybody, because it is a 57 lap Grand Prix. Let's move over to the detail board, though. Let's make sure everything is loaded. I need the driver transcripts to be a little bit longer. DRS has been disabled, of course. It is only the formation lap, but it will be enabled once the drivers have completed 1 lap of the circuit. I'm just going to move that as well so everyone can see everything. Beautiful. We are ready to go. Ferrari, please lock in for once. I think hoping for a miracle there, unfortunately, lads. I would not bet on Ferrari doing that much with what they have got in terms of their package. Quick rundown of the grid once more. Piastri starts on pole, Lando Norris second, and Verstappen third in the podium places, as we see the very elegant Qatar Grand Prix trophy. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite ones of the season, but those 3 drivers at the moment going home with a copy of them. And George Russell and Kimi Antonelli hoping that they can get one for Mercedes instead after their double podium finish in Vegas. Hadjar starting best of the rest in 6th place. Carlos Sainz 7th. Fernando Alonso 8th. And Gasly and Leclerc starting inside of the point scoring places. Everybody starting on the grid though. No pit lane starts or anything like that in this one. Whereas we did see that last time around in Vegas. We saw 4 cars starting from the pit lane. As we tick over, and we're going to start to get towards a formation lap. In fact, we are underway for the formation lap. Oscar Piastri leading the cars down towards turn 1. Already Lando Norris and Max Verstappen weaving around. The 2 possible strategies being shown on the screen, a medium soft and a medium hard soft. If it was me, I'd be medium, and then the soft compound tire, looking at sort of 22 to 23 laps in the first stint likely. And then we go from there. Will there be safety cars? Will there be red flags that pay into everything going a little bit awry for these cars out on track? And will it change the order considerably? Let's wait and see. Oscar Piastri coming around the middle sector now, looping turn 7. Is a tricky kind of middle sector here. Very difficult to get perfect. Of course, a MotoGP track at heart, the Qatar Losail circuit. Piastri coming around turn 11. Franco Colapinto has only just made his way around turn 1. A little bit slow off the mark, the Argentine. The Alpine car not quite clicking into gear for him, which doesn't bode amazingly well for Oscar Piastri, who's going to be sat stationary for a little while until Franco Colapinto also makes his way all the way around the circuit. Oh, is Colapinto a pit lane start? I missed that. When was that suggested? I mean, to be fair, he was already having a tough time this weekend. Maybe they've swapped around his car so that he can have something a little bit more similar to what Pierre Gasly managed to have in qualifying yesterday. There is David Beckham, of all the people, to be in Qatar. Here we are then. Piastri is indeed coming down the pit lane. A couple of burnouts for Oscar Piastri to get those rear tyres fired up before the start of this Grand Prix. Still working those tyres as Oscar Piastri as he gets closer and closer to his pit box. Lando Norris has slowed down a touch, leaving his teammate a little bit of a gap. George Russell taking his spot in 4th. Verstappen already stationary. There comes Antonelli and Hadjar then, followed up by Alonso and Sainz behind. Gasly and Leclerc come to a stop. Colapinto does indeed pull into the pits. So we're all eyes on Gabriel Bortoleto now. Bortoleto, the final driver who needs to stop inside of his grid box before the starting procedure can get underway. You can see the medical car in the distance there. As Bortoleto comes past the start-finish line, and the medical car chases him down the grid, situates itself behind the 19 drivers. And the green flag is waved as all 19 cars are now stationary on the grid. 5 red lights stand between us and the start of the Qatar Grand Prix. It's a very quick start, and Oscar Piastri gets away well. So does Max Verstappen. Verstappen is alongside Lando Norris already going down towards turn 1, and Verstappen is going to take that place from Lando Norris. Verstappen up into 2nd. George Russell and Antonelli too far behind to really cause Lando Norris any more issues, but Piastri with a brilliant start, and Verstappen also getting away incredibly well. Lando Norris then trying to break the toe as Verstappen. Lando Norris trying to get back at the Dutchman, but isn't able to do it this time around. Lando Norris then drops to 3rd from the start. George Russell also looking a little bit worse for wear. I don't know what's happened there to the Mercedes car. He looks all over the place, and he has dropped down to 7th now as Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso have made their way past George Russell. Maybe it was just pushed a little bit wide, George, but didn't expect him to drop down so substantially. I'll see the replay of the start a little bit later on. Hadjar is in 8th, Gasly 9th, and Leclerc still in 10th. Hulkenberg and Behrman swapping around. Oh, no, and fighting back. Hulkenberg stays ahead. Lawson and Hamilton also swapping positions very quickly there as Hamilton tried to get past the RB car, but Hamilton put to one side. Lawson contains and has 13th place. Ocon 15th, Tsunoda 16th, Albon, Stroll, Bortoletto, and Colapinto at the back of the pack. But as we come around turn 16 to start the second lap of this Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri has got it all under control. Max Verstappen over a second behind, so no DRS for the Dutchman, and also no DRS for Lando Norris. It is Kimi Antonelli, the closest driver to their next competitor in terms of that top 10. Sainz and Alonso also within DRS range. Russell has DRS to Fernando Alonso. There's a little bit of a train behind Lando Norris, which means everybody not really gaining too much of an advantage realistically. But Oscar is absolutely flown off the blocks. It was a great start from the Australian. He's got himself a 1.5 lead already. Verstappen was also really quick off the mark. And then got himself in front of Lando Norris. DRS now enabled for the 20 drivers out on track. Antonelli, the only driver with DRS in this top 4, though. See what he can do, Antonelli's going to try and go for a move early, try and be aggressive with it. At the moment, the championship would go to Abu Dhabi, with Piastri 12 points adrift of Lando Norris. It would be a 10-point swing for the Australian. Norris just needs to remember 2 third-place finishes is enough. Third place is fine for Lando. Even though he's dropped down a position from where he started, it is more than okay in terms of his championship position. Antonelli does have DRS to Lando Norris, but is nowhere near touching distance. I'll tell you, Nico Hulkenberg is having a look at Pierre Gasly as Charles Leclerc has dropped down a couple of positions, actually. And we didn't see Charles Leclerc move down to 11th place and outside of the point-scoring position. So Leclerc, Nico Hulkenberg on the soft compound tyre, making that count and getting past the Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton is up into 14th place, but still both Ferraris outside of the point-scoring positions for now. And we can look at the Constructors and Drivers' Championships a little bit later on. But let's wait until these cars settle in just a little more. Piastri quicker than Verstappen on that second lap by a couple of tenths of a second. 127.150 from Piastri versus Verstappen's 127.349. And George Russell now frustrated behind Fernando Alonso. Alonso still has DRS to Carlos Sainz, though, so Russell hasn't really got much of an advantage to go at the minute. Here we go, then. Lando Norris comes around the final corner, can see his teammate disappear off into the distance. And Kimi Antonelli is just about within DRS range, but Lando Norris starting to pull away from the Mercedes car. Haven't seen that replay of the start from George Russell yet, but Russell dropping from 4th down to 7th. And an incident involving Pierre Gasly rejoining unsafely at turn 14. So maybe a little bit of a tete-a-tete between Gasly and Hulkenberg, or possibly even Charles Leclerc a couple of laps ago. Let's see this then. George Russell, yeah, just gets away a little bit slower than Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli moves up alongside George Russell. And then Antonelli actually gets a much better dive around the outside. But then George Russell must get it all wrong through turn 2, possibly, because Alonso and Sainz are still behind. And actually, we don't get to see it. We see the guys disappear off into the distance. Oscar Piastri. Yeah, it's just a good start from Piastri and Verstappen. Slightly awkward start from Lando Norris. Now looking back at it. A little bit of wheel spin on the McLaren of Lando Norris, possibly. And that's just what's cost him a little bit. Oh, thank you for the super chat. The Pat Cummins of F1 is back. Cummins? Cummins? Cummins. I don't know who that is. Lewis Hamilton, was pushed a little bit aside by Liam Lawson there. That was a little bit of a battle between the two. And it was Nico Hülkenberg. It was down towards turn 1 on Charles Leclerc. Leclerc maybe just not getting the launch out of turn 16 that he was expecting. And the soft compound tyre of Nico Hülkenberg doing wonders, getting him past Charles Leclerc. Leclerc actually lucky he didn't get outdone by... Ooh. And then Gasly actually losing it a little bit around turn 14. That's where he went off and back on. Not sure if... I don't know. I don't think he would really call that a unsafe rejoin from Pierre Gasly if it was me. He's an Aussie cricketer. There you go. I've never watched a game of cricket in my life. Could not name a single cricketer, if I'm honest. And Verstappen on the radio. Extreme balance shifts right to left-hand corners. So Verstappen, not comfortable inside of that car. Does have a 2-second gap to Lando Norris. I think those three at the front settling in a touch, though, realizing that they can just give themselves a couple of seconds between each car, look after their tyres a touch. Particularly at this point in the Grand Prix, we kind of forget that now that refueling isn't a thing in Formula One, they're so heavy at the start of the Grand Prix. It's much harder to make moves and try and change the momentum of that car, right? You're wrestling it through the corners a lot more and having to fight it. Think about a shopping trolley, right? When you pick up the shopping trolley at the beginning, it's kind of the inverse, I guess, of a shopping trolley. When your shopping trolley is full of stuff and really heavy and you try and change its direction of travel, it's hard, right? You've got to really work out the trolley and push it around the corners. That's kind of what the cars are like now. They're heavier, they've more fuel on board, and it is trickier for the drivers to throw them into the corners at full speed. Whereas as the fuel comes out, as the weight comes down towards the end of the Grand Prix, you can kind of push these cars a little bit harder and you can carry a bit more momentum into every corner. That's why in qualifying they have as little fuel as possible inside of their cars. So at the moment, we are seeing them sort of lumber around a little bit and struggle a little bit more. That's why the cars generally give themselves a little bit more of their time between each other. Piastri, Verstappen, Norris still are top three. Antonelli 4th, Sainz 5th, Alonso 6th, Russell 7th, Hadjar, Gasly, and Hülkenberg down at the bottom. Oh, and Hülkenberg has gone for a spin, and it's a Nico Hülkenberg. Oh, what has happened there? It's between turn 1 and turn 2 as Hülkenberg tried to make a move, possibly on Pierre Gasly, because Gasly has also dropped down the pecking order. I think there's been a touch between Gasly and Hülkenberg, because, yeah, there's certainly some disasters there. And there is a safety car. And there is a safety car on lap 7 of the Grand Prix. So it is an awkward position for the safety car to come out into. And it's going to be very difficult for the drivers to judge this. If you're Piastri, do you pit? If you're Max Verstappen, do you pit? It's an interesting one. It's right on that fringe case because obviously they can do 25 laps on the other tyre sets. Would I pit? I don't know if I'd pit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would. Piastri's going to make the call though, and the McLaren team are deciding right now. Is Piastri going to come in? No. Will Verstappen come in? Yes. Verstappen comes in. Red Bull taking the gamble now and getting the soft tyre, I think, prepared for Max Verstappen. This could be massive. Ferrari also deciding to come in. Antonelli's in. Russell's in. Sainz is in. In fact, everybody seems to be zigging where McLaren have zagged. Has Piastri got it wrong here? Has Lando Norris got it wrong here? Ocon continues on. Stroll and Bortoletto inside of the pits now. Colapinto comes in too. So Verstappen is going to come out still in 4th place. If Esteban Ocon could get out of the way of Max Verstappen. That is huge for the Dutchman. And Mercedes stacking the two cars. And George Russell actually losing out a little bit there. Ferrari having to do the same. Lewis Hamilton having to wait for his teammate a touch. And wow, lots of cars pitting then. It was right on that fringe, wasn't it? Literally, if the safety car would have been a lap earlier, it wouldn't have been worthwhile. That lap, the exact lap, lap 7, which allowed 50 laps to go and 25 lap stints on 2 sets of tyres, it works out perfectly for the cars to pit there and then. Piastri, Norris, Ocon deciding not to do it. Piastri, Norris, and Ocon staying out. Ocon is going to be right in front of Max Verstappen, though, as Verstappen is going to be leading the cars that have pitted. Everybody else deciding to come into the pits. Wow. Okay. Here's what it is. Let's see the replay of it. Gasly and Hülkenberg side by side. Oh, and then just a little... It's the tiniest of touches, but it takes that rear right tyre. And I think it's... Is it a racing instant? Not sure Gasly could have done too much. Hülkenberg thinks he's ahead. Hülkenberg's carrying way more momentum and has got those soft compound tyres to grip into the track a little bit better. It's aggressive from Hülkenberg. He tries to go around the outside of turn 1 to get on the inside of turn 2. And Gasly just clips his rear tyre, sends the Stakes Sauber car spinning as soon as he's through the gravel, and there's significant damage to the rear tyre of the Stakes Sauber car. That rear right tyre taking a battering there as the tyres clip one another. And that gap just closes a little bit too much for Hülkenberg to sneak through it. And Ocon pits now too. So this has played out perfectly. If you're a Max Verstappen fan, it has to be said. And a 5-second time penalty for Esteban Ocon. Is that why he's decided to pit? Why has Esteban Ocon picked up that time penalty? Should we have a little look at the investigations tracker? False start. False start for Esteban Ocon. That was why he picked up that 5-second penalty. So we have seen some 5-second penalties given yesterday in the sprint as well for track limits violations. Antonelli and Tsunoda, the exact drivers that were given 5-second time penalties yesterday. They've already got a couple of track limits infringements between them. And Lando Norris on the radio being told they have lost all their flexibility for the remainder of the race. That's very true. If there's a second safety car, you could say that Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are in a much better position, or a red flag or something like that. But at the same time, Verstappen has to get 25 laps out of both sets of tyres, and so does everybody else, right? Everybody going for 25 lap stints exactly. We know exactly when Max Verstappen has got to pit, effectively, and that's what McLaren will be thinking about, and McLaren will be saying to themselves, right, although we are ahead out on track, yes, okay, everybody else has got a pit stop now done, they have to do exactly 25 laps on both sets of tyres, where McLaren can maybe play the strategy a little bit more. George Russell having to wait for a bit of the traffic to come by in that pit stop. I can understand why McLaren have done it. Interesting that they didn't do one and the other. I think if I was Lando Norris, and Lando Norris kind of said it on the radio, and I can completely understand his perspective on it, why he didn't go in where Piastri didn't, right? So if you're going to do one and the other. But at the same time, he's now still sitting behind his teammate. Yes, everybody behind has lost flexibility. But Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri have lost out on a free pit stop, effectively. As Piastri slows down behind the safety car. Lando Norris does the same. Max Verstappen is back into third spot. Everybody else is slightly reshuffled. Carlos Sainz came out of that very nicely. He's up into fourth. Antonelli's dropped a position to fifth. Alonso's still sixth. Hadjar actually jumped a position up on George Russell because Russell had to slow down in the pits. And then Charles Leclerc back up into the point-scoring places after Hülkenberg and Gasly came together. There's that 5-second penalty for Esteban Ocon. And a second pit stop for Esteban Ocon. I mean, makes sense to serve it now while the safety car is still out there, but Esteban Ocon is going to be a good chunk of lap time adrift of everybody else. They are now looking into that incident between Gasly and Hulkenberg. I mean, it's ruined both of their Grand Prix. They were both inside of the point scoring places at the time, and Hulkenberg was making moves forwards on those soft compound tyres. He's now out. Pierre Gasly has dropped down to 18th, even behind his teammate. And now everyone else will be stopping on lap 32. We know that now. Lando Norris wanting, or McLaren wanting really good pace from the McLaren car until lap 25. So, I mean, it's a little bit awkward, isn't it? Piastri now holding back the pack. And Lando Norris being told on the radio to get close to the back of Oscar Piastri. They know that this could be an opportunity to really go for it. Could see the two papaya cars really under pressure here from Max Verstappen, who's also launched well behind Lando Norris. They're going around, and Piastri's gone early here. You have to say he's running around turn 15, turn 16 now being attacked by the three championship rivals. They come around turn 16 within touching distance of one another. It's a good launch from Piastri. He seems like he's outside of the range of Lando Norris, and Norris seems just about far enough away from Verstappen as well down towards turn 1. So they are going to go into turn 2 in the same order that they were. Piastri, Norris, Verstappen. Sainz and Antonelli then follow closely behind. Alonso, Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc and Behrman now inside of the point scoring positions. Lawson the closest to the top 10 in 11th spot. This is going to get interesting, though. The tactics now behind this and whether or not McLaren have really missed a trick here in that now, okay, yes, we know everybody has to pit on lap 32, and we don't know when the two McLaren cars are going to have to pit, but it also feels like everyone kind of did a trick that maybe they missed out on. Oh, oh no, it's under investigation. I thought Gasly had gotten a penalty there. But no, it's a track limits violation that he's got. He's still under investigation for that. Interesting to see what the stewards do say about that. I think it was a bit of a racing incident, if I'm honest. But then Norris and Piastri have gone absolutely hell for leather. They know they've got to build a gap here. So Piastri and Norris have to build as much of a gap as possible to the traffic behind, because they really don't want a pit stop where they then drop into, I don't know, an Alonso, a Hadjar, a Russell, where it is then an absolute nightmare for them to get back through the field again, even with a second pit stop coming. So that's why Oscar Piastri has just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. They know that they can basically go hell for leather here. And I think we're going to see some real, almost qualifying style laps from the two McLarens, whereas Max Verstappen knows that he needs to do 25 laps exactly on these tyres. No more, no less. So he knows exactly 25 laps need to be completed on these medium compound tyres on the Red Bull car. And so does everybody else. So everybody else knows that they need to maintain a pace. And the incident involving Esteban Ocon as well. Ocon in the books once again. So let's see. We've got 25 lap mandated pit stops for these cars. So every set of tyres, you are only allowed to do 25 laps. You have to do three different stints, 2 different pit stops throughout the Grand Prix. The safety car came out on lap 7, which leaves exactly 50 laps left, which, if my maths is correct, is 25 times 2. So everybody deciding to pit on lap 7, and they will have to do exactly 25 laps on this stint of tyres, followed by exactly 25 laps of the next stint of tyres that they go on to. If there's another safety car, it's pointless for anybody else to pit other than the McLarens. The McLaren cars know that they have a little bit more flexibility in when they can stop and what they can use their tyres for. They don't have to do exactly 25 laps on their stints of tyres. They can do 18 and then 20 and then 25, right? They can do literal anything as long as they don't go over 25. Oh my goodness me, it is getting very tight indeed. Doesn't help Lando Norris because he's now going to be playing second fiddle to Oscar Piastri still. So Piastri is going to be able to pit at the perfect moment for him. Lando Norris might have to pit at a slightly more awkward time for himself. So here we go then. Oh my God. It is getting very tight indeed. McLaren win. Lando Norris could be world champion, I guess. I mean, yeah, if Oscar Piastri moves out of the way of his teammate, then Lando Norris would be the world champion. But don't think Oscar Piastri is going to do that. If Oscar Piastri wasn't in the championship battle and it was, say, between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen only, then I think we would be seeing Piastri moving out of the way of his teammate. That's the other thing that McLaren have now got. Because they've got two drivers in the fight, they can't, do one thing for another and one thing for one driver. And they have to kind of play both drivers and they can't work together in that same way. Max is like a T-Rex. Isaac Hadjar sitting in 7th place behind Fernando Alonso. Let's see the gap then. Piastri and Norris, remembering that they need to get a good chunk of time ahead of this field. It'd be a 20-second pit stop, remember, so they would still come out at the back of the pack. So if Piastri were to pit right now, he would still come out behind Pierre Gasly, and that is what they really don't want. But if you also look at Piastri's lap times, 125.3, he is absolutely going hell for leather, where Verstappen is in the 126s, Carlos Sainz in the 126s. They are losing time to the two McLarens ahead, but playing a very different game, right? They're really, really in very different situations moving forwards. It's not going to lead to much on-track action. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. This is very much a wait for 15 laps, kind of see where everybody plays out at that point. We are looking at lap times from Piastri and Norris, and we are comparing them to lap times to Max Verstappen. There's not going to be much on-track tete-a-tete between the McLaren and the Red Bull cars. I think Max is nursing his tyres. Yeah, most certainly. Has to be, because he has to do 25 laps on them. There is no ifs or buts about it. He has to do 25 laps on those tyres, and he cannot afford for them to just drop off of a cliff. So Max needs to hold out. That's why he's going to drop to 4, 5, 6 seconds adrift of the two McLaren cars, get himself a nice gap of clean air as well. Because that's the other thing. If Verstappen can let the two McLaren cars just disappear into the distance, he knows that the two McLaren cars have got to stop twice, right? They've got to drop 40 seconds worth of time. Verstappen has only got to stop once. So he has got 20 seconds in his hands to play with. So as long as Verstappen doesn't drop more than 20 seconds to the two McLarens over the next, 43 laps, he is still going to win this race. That is where it is at. Okay, he needs to maintain his pace perfectly. He will gain track position at some point in this Grand Prix. And then we see what kind of pace Max Verstappen has when he's on slightly older tyres compared to McLaren, who are going to be on fresher sets of tyres towards the end of this Grand Prix. We also look at the gap. Fernando Alonso is the problem here and is kind of the cork in the bottle. Fernando Alonso is holding up Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc, Behrman. And that means there is now a gap opening up that if Piastri and Norris can pit at the right time, they will only come out behind Kimi Antonelli. So they'll only drop down to at least 5th. And if Piastri and Norris finish the race 4th and 5th, okay, Verstappen finishes 1st. It's a very different title battle, but Lando Norris would still be leading the championship, even if that were the case. Although Carlos Sainz is also going to have to be maintaining his tyres. Antonelli is maintaining his tyres. Like, they're in the 126.8s, 127.3 from Antonelli last lap. Whereas Piastri and Norris are pushing. Piastri and Norris are trying to find every single second that they can. They have made a gap of 10 seconds to Carlos Sainz in 4th place already. 12 seconds to Kimi Antonelli in 5th. Still looking at that 20-second time, though. And it's going to be another 5 or 6 laps before the 2 McLarens do decide to come in. Of course, they have to come in before lap 25. So they've got a maximum of 8 laps here, the 2 McLarens, to build as big of a gap to the rest of the field as possible. So we're looking at where that 20-second margin lies. At the moment, it lies with Lawson. They've got 8 laps to get that as high up on the board as possible. So it is getting very tight indeed between those drivers at the top end. Just gonna we just pop that there. There we go. Unless the pit crew botch it. Yeah, that's also a very good point, Declan. The McLaren pit crew. I'm assuming it's going to be around a 20-second stop, but if it's a 24, 25, 26-second stop that we see from the 2 McLaren cars, then all of a sudden it becomes a very different Grand Prix for them, doesn't it? So Liam Lawson now 21 seconds behind, Ollie Behrman 20.7. So we're looking at them pitting and probably coming out in and around them. Piastri absolutely pushing it. I'm assuming Piastri is also going to be able to pit first of the 2 McLarens. I would imagine they're going to try and go fairly long. Like, if Piastri can go to lap 25 on these mediums, he probably will. But then it's kind of the debate around, can Piastri go all the way to 25 and still increase that gap? I know that Verstappen and the likes behind are managing, but he's only gained 0.3 of a second there last lap, and Lando Norris was actually slower than Verstappen on the last lap. So this is looking very good for Max Verstappen right about now. Max is in the 125s, Lando Norris in the 126s. It's getting very awkward for the 2 McLaren cars if there isn't a pit stop opportunity, safety car, something of the like for them. 7.8 seconds behind the leader, Max Verstappen. 12 seconds, Carlos Sainz. 15 seconds, Kimi Antonelli. And maybe that middle stint for McLaren is going to be absolutely crucial. They might have to make their way through some of these midfield cars who are kind of up in their pace a little bit now. Sainz and Antonelli are still in the 126s in terms of their pace. 127 from Antonelli then just around. And Alonso is deep in the 127s. Alonso causing a real traffic jam in 6th place. We've seen a lot of Alonso DRS trains throughout the season, haven't we? He's doing it again. Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc, Behrman all following very closely behind Fernando Alonso. And Alonso knows just how to maintain his tyres perfectly and frustrate almost everyone else behind. Like, he really does just play the strategy perfectly, does Fernando Alonso. Yeah, so they are talking about the gap between Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso. So Norris on the radio is being told that Alonso is the gap. And I can understand why, because that 20-second margin that was around Behrman Lawson now, a couple of laps later, has moved up. Fernando Alonso, 20.6 seconds off the leader, Oscar Piastri. Kimi Antonelli still 16.2 seconds. So it's, can Piastri get himself ahead of Kimi Antonelli? He's got a couple more laps to be able to find 4-5 seconds, quite possibly. So, still waiting. Antonelli still putting in the lap times, 127s. Piastri into the 125s. Lando Norris into the 125s as well. But Verstappen doing the same. So Verstappen has maybe been given the go ahead by the Red Bull team, sorry. And Verstappen realizing that there is certainly an opportunity to win this Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz and Kimi Antonelli in a slightly awkward position because they know that they could absolutely guarantee 4th and 5th. Do they want to try and risk it for a podium place and try and upset one of the McLaren cars? That's the thing that Sainz and Antonelli have kind of got into their thinking. Fernando Alonso causing chaos from 6th backwards. So if you're Lando Norris, at least you know you're probably worst case scenario, you're finishing 5th. So it's still not an absolute nightmare scenario for Lando Norris in all of this. It's not like Lando Norris is going to finish with no points on the board or anything like that. Absolute worst case scenario, he finishes behind Kimi Antonelli in 5th place. And that is absolute worst case because I don't think that will really happen. I think it's likely that they will have the pace to be able to get past Antonelli and possibly even Sainz as well. So Piastri yet to pit, comes around again, lap 21 of the Grand Prix. This is where we were expecting the majority of pit stops to start happening. It was sort of lap 21, 22, 23 was where we were expecting a lot of the cars who started the Grand Prix on the medium tyre to come in for their first pit stop. So that safety car obviously getting one stop out of the way for everybody. But the first stop not yet completed for Piastri and Lando Norris. Second stop still required, though. Verstappen needs to go all the way to lap 32 on these medium tyres. He's done 13 laps. He will need to do 25 on them. And then 25 in his final stint as well. It is awkward. It is very awkward indeed for the two McLaren cars right now. Verstappen kind of playing it perfectly. Fernando Alonso is doing a dream job for the McLarens. Black and white flag for Alex Albon as he gets a track limits infringement for the 3rd time. Yuki Tsunoda's also got a track limits infringement. A couple of them, sorry. Lando Norris has picked up 1 track limits infringement as well. Remember, 4 track limits infringements gets you a 5-second time penalty. Lando Norris really can't afford that when it is fine margins at the moment between Antonelli and Alonso. Still only 7 seconds separating those two. But luckily, Fernando Alonso now 24 seconds off the leader, Oscar Piastri. So when Piastri pits, he will come out at least ahead of Fernando Alonso, likely behind Kimi Antonelli, though, as Antonelli unlikely to drop 4 seconds in the next couple of laps. Max Verstappen will have the lead of the race when the two McLaren cars stop. Piastri needs to... It's interesting as well. Will Piastri get the stop first? Or does Lando Norris have to stop on lap 24 because Piastri wants to go all the way to the 25-lap limit on these mediums? Be interesting to see what Piastri decides to do in terms of that pitting and which order they decide to pit into. Oh, and Alex Albon, yeah, it does go just that little bit wide at turn 10. And that was why he got that 3rd track limits infringement. That 5-second time penalty for Esteban Ocon as well. He has now served, so that is all done and dusted for him. Nobody holding on to penalties anymore. And the McLaren guys standing in the garage still as Piastri comes past the start-finish line. And 23 laps now on those medium compound tyres for Oscar Piastri. He has cleared Fernando Alonso. Antonelli not going to be cleared, though. Piastri is going to come out, well, actually, only just ahead of Fernando Alonso. Lando Norris needs to just be a little bit careful here, because if it is a slow stop and Lando Norris finds himself behind Fernando Alonso and in a real muddle of cars, it could be a pretty horrible fight for him. Here we are then. Lando Norris on the radio. Next tyre, we come down 1. And Lando Norris saying he is struggling now to get the pace inside of that car. He is 4 seconds adrift of Piastri. He's had to really drop off the back of Oscar to close in that gap. And interesting that Oscar kind of is where he is Hasn't tried to slow down Norris in any way. I suppose Piastri's got to make sure he's at least 25, 26 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso. So Piastri's got to still go hell for leather. Gives Lando Norris a little bit more room to run into, I guess. Verstappen has held on to the back of these two McLarens surprisingly well, considering, like, I know that his tyres are only 7 laps older. Sorry, the McLaren cars are only 7 laps older, but Verstappen's still doing some very solid lap times, considering he has got to hold on to those tyres for 25 laps. Then Carlos Sainz sort of in the 126.6s that time around. Antonelli, 126.7. So Antonelli trying to close into the back of the Williams cars. But again, I think knowing that the final stint is going to be the real stint that counts. So a lot of the midfield cars sort of settling in and not doing too much. Well, everyone behind Fernando Alonso not doing anything at all. It is like a real Monaco-style train behind Fernando Alonso. Just holding up the rest of the field. Piastri on the radio. Box is going to be Oscar Piastri, our race leader, into the pits at the end of lap 24 of this Grand Prix. Makes sense because they need to also pit Lando Norris within these first 25 laps. I don't imagine they're going to double stack the two McLarens. And Piastri sweeps in, coming turn 16. Are they going to double stack? No, Lando Norris continues on. We'll do the full 25 lap stint on these medium tyres. And Piastri is into the pits then. Needs to be a solid stop. It's not amazing, but it's good enough. It's a 3.1 second stop from Oscar Piastri. And let's see, Carlos Sainz and Kimi Antonelli. There they are. Oscar Piastri still not out of the pits yet. And there comes Piastri into view. Fernando Alonso also coming around turn 16. And Piastri has got a good little gap to Fernando Alonso. And this is where Fernando Alonso versus Lando Norris might be an interesting one. Lando Norris needs an absolute god of a lap here then, because Piastri was only just ahead of Fernando. What is the gap between Piastri and Alonso? 1.3 seconds. This is going to be tight for Lando Norris. I'm a little bit worried for him, if I'm honest, because if he does get stuck behind Alonso and Hadjar and Russell, I know it will only be for a few laps, but it could be for some substantial laps in terms of his race pace and in terms of the gap that he will have to Piastri and Verstappen ahead of him. Again, I know a third place finish for Lando Norris is good enough, though, but it's then when Carlos Sainz and Kimi Antonelli are in the mix. Could get a little bit awkward. Here comes Lando Norris into the pits then. Let's see where everybody else is. Verstappen comes around turn 16, and Verstappen is your new race leader. Carlos Sainz is just making his way down towards turn 16 as well. Kimi Antonelli behind him in the Mercedes car. And it's a very nice stop from Lando Norris. 2.2 second stop for Lando Norris. Almost a second quicker than the stop Piastri had. There goes Antonelli and Sainz, as we saw before. Here comes Oscar Piastri, who is also going to be ahead of his teammate comfortably. The main man is Fernando Alonso, and Lando Norris is out just ahead of Fernando Alonso. They needed an absolute top stop from that team, and if Fernando Alonso would have been any closer, Lando Norris would have been in real trouble. But Lando Norris does get out of the pits. He is ahead of Fernando Alonso, and Alonso now behind Lando Norris. We'll have DRS, but a lot of laps completed on those medium tyres. Wow. That was like perfect from McLaren, it has to be said. If McLaren had got those lap time or those pit stop times the other way around, so if McLaren has given Lando Norris a 3.1 second pit stop and Oscar Piastri a 2.2, I think Lando Norris could have come out literally right beside Fernando Alonso. But it was a perfect stop from the pit crew. And Lando Norris now escapes away from the clutches of the Spaniard and looks ahead to where Oscar Piastri is lapping ahead of him. Max Verstappen, a 125.4 from him. Let's look at the lap time from Oscar Piastri as Sainz pits in a 126.7, a 126.5, and Oscar Piastri has just been in the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 124.945. And he needs to continue to put in those lap times, Oscar Piastri. It is the second stint for the two McLaren drivers. They've got a lot more leeway compared to the rest of the field. We know that Verstappen is going to pit on lap 32 of this Grand Prix, followed by everyone else other than the two McLarens as well. Everyone is going to stop basically the exact same time. I guess Esteban Ocon also doesn't have to stop then. And actually, Lance Stroll has come in for a second pit stop and dropped backwards a little bit. Piastri saying everyone has to pit on lap 32. That is correct. It's a 5-second time penalty, actually, for Lance Stroll, which is maybe why he pitted. No, he pitted and got then a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So Lance Stroll in a bit of an awkward situation for himself there. Wouldn't want to be Lance Stroll at this very moment in time. And Kimi Antonelli within striking distance of Oscar Piastri, possibly. Piastri, I don't think will... maybe he has to go for the overtake. Carlos Sainz and Kimi Antonelli are going to pit in 5 laps' time, but does Piastri want to sit there for 5 laps? And Oscar Piastri being told on the radio they can go to lap 94, 49. They can go to lap 49, can Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris can go to lap 50 on those tyres if needs be, but they do need to pit again. So everybody needs to stop at least one more time. It's just that the two McLaren cars have stopped most recently. Antonelli, Sainz and Verstappen have completed 20 laps on those tyres ahead of Piastri. Piastri, though, catching the back of Kimi Antonelli pretty quickly. It was another 124.9 from Oscar Piastri as he is chasing down the Italian driver. He's going to be within DRS range fairly soon, but then he needs to just be a little bit careful about that tyre degradation. I know that he's got the opportunity to pit whenever he likes, but he doesn't want to burn through those tyres so that he can't put in these kind of flying laps later on in the stint, because he's going to have to pit a lot later than the rest of the pack. Piastri and Norris, 17 seconds and 22 seconds behind Verstappen. Verstappen, though, knows he doesn't really have to worry about anyone else because everyone else is going to have to pit exactly the same time Verstappen does. So we can look at this gap between Verstappen and Alonso and say, well, it's 25 seconds. It's right on the fringe. But actually, Verstappen knows that when he pits, Alonso's pitting. So it is going to drop. And Fernando Alonso has finally pushed the limits. Fernando Alonso keeping himself all but Fernando Alonso doing a job here, slowing everybody up massively, and then now has actually decided to put the burners on. It's a 126.2 from Alonso. He's escaping away from Isaac Hadjar all of a sudden and has built a bit of a gap to everybody else now because he knows that he's got to pit once again and just wants the best strategy for himself. Fernando Alonso is not bothered about this championship battle and helping out McLaren or helping out Verstappen. He just wants to get the maximum number of points for Aston Martin, and he's doing it the sneakiest way possible, as we should expect from Fernando. Lap 30 then, Max Verstappen comes across the line. He's got 2 more laps on these tyres before he has to then pit. Or 2 more full laps, I should say. DRS open from Oscar Piastri. Is there a move from Oscar Piastri incoming? Is he going to lunge up the inside of the Mercedes car? He is! Oscar Piastri makes a move up in towards turn 1. And it is a substantial move from Oscar Piastri. He's up into 3rd place. And Kimi Antonelli has been dispatched. That is a substantial move because remember, everybody's got to pit again. So he has got to move past these cars out on track, and Antonelli has been gotten rid of by Piastri already. Next up is Carlos Sainz on the list of drivers, a couple of seconds up the road. Lando Norris, though, is still 2.3 seconds behind. Lando Norris gets his second track limits warning as well. And it was a sweet move from Oscar Piastri. No hesitation from the Australian at all. Up the inside of turn one. Kimi Antonelli doesn't put up too much of a fight. And he is there. Charles Leclerc on the radio. Check every lap George's line into turn 10 entry. I'm sure he is out. So Charles Leclerc not very happy with the line that George Russell is taking through turn 10. There's just no overtaking opportunities unless you're on that substantial tyre difference, is there? Everyone in the midfield locked behind Fernando Alonso for so long, and Russell and Leclerc just stuck in 8th and 9th place. Not really where they've been used to racing in their Formula One careers. Well, I suppose George Russell, towards the beginning, would have been very happy with an 8th or 9th place, but not nowadays. 10th place for Ollie Behrman, looking like a point to Haas as well. And Fernando Alonso has indeed played the game perfectly. He's now 3 seconds ahead of Isaac Hadjar, knowing that everybody's going to have to pit. So he's just given himself a little bit of a margin, because if that pit stop goes a little bit slow or isn't quite perfect, the Aston Martin team will still be in a very solid position. And Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc trying to escape away from them as well. Now we've got Lando Norris behind Kimi Antonelli. But we know Antonelli has got a pit next lap anyway, so is Norris even going to bother? Same with Oscar Piastri, just behind Carlos Sainz at the moment. Knows that Carlos Sainz is going to pit in a lap's time. Everybody else is very predictable to the McLarens at this point. Everyone has to pit on lap 32 of this Grand Prix, and then we run into the final 25-lap stints for everybody else. Max Verstappen, box a box. Of course, starts lap 32. Oscar Piastri, DRS to Carlos Sainz. Is he going to go for it? Is Lando Norris going to go for a move on Kimi Antonelli? Both of the McLaren cars coming down the pit straight beside their rivals. Antonelli actually moves a little bit to the inside to cover off Lando Norris. And Norris is not close enough to Antonelli to get the move done. So Norris is just a little bit too far back from Antonelli. And he just didn't do the lunge like Piastri, didn't want to risk it. Piastri has to take those risks where Lando Norris doesn't. So Norris now sitting in 5th spot. Antonelli ahead of him. Piastri is in 3rd. Carlos Sainz 2nd. Max Verstappen will be leading this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is going to come out behind Lando Norris, though. The gap to Lando Norris, 22.5 seconds. So Verstappen will pit and come out ahead of Fernando Alonso still, though. That was the real gap they had to keep an eye on down at Red Bull, because Fernando Alonso deciding he was going to turn up with some lap times all of a sudden. But it is still 27.851, the gap between Verstappen and Alonso, as our current world champion pits and our current championship leader begs for Kimi Antonelli to get out of the way. So Verstappen is in. Sainz follows, releasing Oscar Piastri back into the lead of this race. Kimi Antonelli also then has to pit, and Lando Norris continues on. So the two McLarens make their way past Max Verstappen. Verstappen, though, is going to come out, and everybody else is going to pit behind. Hadjar's in, Russell's in, Leclerc, Behrman, Lawson, Tsunoda, Albon, Hamilton, Bortoletto, Colapinto, Ocon. Oh, sorry, Ocon doesn't have to pit. But everybody else is going to come in right about now. And Alonso is in and out. George Russell's going to get held up again. He gets released into the side of a racing bull, and that's going to be an awkward one. There is a very awkward couple of moments there in the pit lane. It gets very busy when you've got 18 cars that all need to pit basically all at the same time. Well, I suppose 16 cars. All have to pit, basically, all at the same time. Goodness me. And Russell doesn't contact Hadjar. Leclerc still 10th place. Alonso still where he was. Esteban Ocon didn't pit, so Ocon is going to pit a little bit later. Has to pit, well, in a lap's time also anyway. Sainz and Antonelli still in the order they were. Sainz 4th, Antonelli 5th. Then it is Alonso, Hadjar, Russell, Leclerc. Lance Stroll is in the mix now. Hasn't pitted, but needs to pit again. Has a 5-second penalty anyway. Liam Lawson then in 12th spot in that same mix as everybody else. There we are. Lando Norris back up into 2nd place. Piastri in top spot. And we know that both of the McLarens have to pit again. Max Verstappen does not. Verstappen is going to go all 24 laps that are left on these hard compound tyres. Let's have a little look at this release from George Russell. Is this an unsafe release from the McLaren team? Ooh, it was a little bit awkward. The racing bull was there. The racing bull's ahead. I could see George Russell getting a little bit of a slap on the wrist possibly for that. And maybe even a penalty. And Lando Norris. This is the bit of the race where we need to be quicker than Max. I mean, makes sense. Max Verstappen is going to come round to go his first full flying lap on these tyres. Obviously, he pitted last lap. So we'll see what kind of lap time he has got compared to Piastri and Norris. Piastri set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, a 124.1 last time around. So 124.6 from Norris. Here comes Piastri with a 124.4, 124.7 from Lando Norris, and a 124.8 from Verstappen. So should be more robust. Fuel load is down. Verstappen looking very comfortable indeed. Plankware has entered the chat. That's another thing. Just keep a little bit of an eye on. We know it played a big part in Las Vegas. Lando Norris then. 25 laps completed on those first set of mediums. 9 laps completed on the second set. But Verstappen will go to the end of the Grand Prix where Piastri and Norris both need to pit again. Oh, McLaren, what have we done? We zigged where everyone else zagged. Why didn't we zig? Why didn't we zag? These are the things I will always ask myself as a McLaren fan. When did McLaren pit as well is the other thing. I suppose they've got enough of a gap. Like Piastri could pit now and still come out ahead of Carlos Sainz. Norris could pit now and be ahead of Kimi Antonelli. So Norris is looking like a 3rd place finish. And Verstappen is actually looking for a win here. We'll wait until the McLaren's pit, and then I'll show you what the championship will look like going into Abu Dhabi. But it is certainly not what Lando Norris would have been hoping for an hour or so ago, when we were going into the 5 red lights of this Grand Prix. Oh, and Ollie Behrman actually stalled the car. He's run over something, I think. And Ollie Behrman stopped in the pit lane, and that's why Ollie Behrman has dropped to 18th. I did wonder why he wasn't in the point-scoring places anymore. That's allowed Liam Lawson, actually, the opportunity to jump up into 10th, and Behrman smashes the wheel in front of him in frustration. He knows that has completely and utterly ruined his afternoon. He's now behind Esteban Ocon, who has pitted 3 times. Oscar will pit on lap 50. He pitted on lap 24, didn't he, Oscar? So he's done 11 laps since. So, yeah, around, well, lap 49. Oscar Piastri might pit. Just depends on the preference of tyre, really. Need to weigh up what the best idea is. Trying to get a safety car or just beating him on pace. Best pace to target, -1. So Piastri has been given the go-ahead to start and push. It's 124.5 from Piastri. He's got an 8.7 second gap to Verstappen. He knows that he's got to pit again, though. He's going to have to make up a second a lap. at the end of the Grand Prix if he does want to do it. And Lando Norris, he's gone off. Check the car. Could be damaged, says Lando Norris. He's lost a second, actually, there. I didn't realize. Yeah, Lando Norris, a 125.7, so actually lost a second to Max Verstappen last lap. And Max Verstappen on the harder compound tyre is actually closing in on the back of Lando Norris. 2.2 seconds now, the gap between Verstappen and Norris. Is Verstappen maybe trying to push... Is Norris, sorry, maybe trying to push Verstappen backwards with that opportunity? Because now putting Verstappen in some dirty air, the 2-second gap between the two of them, they know that Sainz and Antonelli are way too far behind to really make any kind of problem. Now, Sainz and Antonelli were causing issues in that middle stint, but as soon as they pitted in front of them, the pace of the McLarens has come back. And Lando Norris, give it a little bit in the high speed to help in the low speed. So temperatures being a little bit off kilter inside of the McLaren car of Lando Norris right now. Goodness me. Let's see a replay of Lando Norris making a mistake then. What happened there? Turn 14. Just carries a little bit too much. Oh, and then, yeah, big snap, actually, of oversteer from Lando Norris. I don't know if he dipped a tyre in the gravel, but certainly looked like it. Shouldn't damage his car too much. It's not a substantial, recovery job for Lando Norris, but did lose some time and now has Max Verstappen in his wing mirrors. Max Verstappen won't pit again, though. That's the problem that Lando Norris has got. Norris needs to stop at least one more time. George Russell now hunting down the back of Isaac Hadjar. Piastri was talking about the possibility of a safety car and what that might mean. Alonso, Hadjar, and Russell having a little tussle could actually make a safety car more likely than you would think. Alonso, again, just a little bit of a train behind him. Did the entire first stint with the entire field of cars, other than the front four, or front five, sorry. And Alonso, once again, looking like he's just going to slam on the brakes and keep Isaac Hadjar at arm's length for the rest of the campaign. And we've got George Russell in 8th place, Charles Leclerc in 9th, and Lance Stroll actually running in 10th spot, although he has got a 5-second penalty and will have to pit again because those medium tyres he is on has already done 13 laps, and there's 18 laps left until the end. And unfortunately for Lance Stroll, those two numbers add up to something more than 25. Max Verstappen, 2 seconds off the back of Lando Norris. Norris now 7 seconds adrift from Piastri. Piastri has been perfect this weekend, it has to be said. It has been a beautiful weekend of racing from the Australian. Not over yet. Don't want to jinx myself, but he has been all but perfect. And Max Verstappen looking most likely to win it, though. As frustrating as that is for Piastri and Piastri fans, it is Max Verstappen who is likely to make up 10 points worth of ground to Lando Norris. Piastri only, 3 points in his favour. And Verstappen right there. Piastri really needs to win this Grand Prix. The problem that Piastri and Verstappen have is even if they come first and second and Lando Norris comes third, as we talked about at the top of the race, Lando Norris coming third, he should be fine with that. Lando Norris does not need to come anywhere higher than third place, and there's no one else anywhere close. Everybody else is all the way back in the distance. Carlos Sainz, the closest competitor in 4th place, is over 20 seconds adrift of Max Verstappen in 3rd. So still not good for Verstappen and Piastri in all of this, as Ollie Behrman picks up a 10-second time penalty. No, sorry, 10-second stop and go penalty for Ollie Behrman. Let's have a little look at what. An unsafe release. Or unsafe condition, even. Lance Stroll also has a 5-second time penalty weighing over his head. Esteban Ocon had a 5-second penalty that he had dealt with earlier on today. And Oscar Piastri coming past the start-finish line again. Here comes Lando Norris too. And I'll tell you what, Lando Norris is losing time to Max Verstappen behind him. So not looking very likely that Lando Norris is going to be anywhere close to Verstappen at the end of this race, as he's going to have to pit in front of him. Piastri on the radio. And Piastri thinking that he wants to try and box now and chase down Max Verstappen. I'll tell you what, it's not a bad call from Oscar Piastri in all of this, because Verstappen is now gaining time on him. Piastri at 124.7, Verstappen at 124.5. Piastri starting to struggle on those medium tyres already, and Piastri actually made a little wobble through turn 14 as well, similar to what we saw from Norris, not quite as dramatic. But Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both struggling on the mediums now, where Verstappen looks comfortable on the hards. What do they do then? Is it a soft compound tyre for Oscar Piastri until the end of the race? Does he try and completely go off what Max Verstappen has done? The McLaren maybe ask Lando Norris to hold up Max Verstappen a touch? Is he going to do that when Oscar Piastri is the closest championship rival that he's got? These are the things in the minds of McLaren right now. Piastri, though, continues on for another lap. Lap 42 of 57 about to be completed for Piastri. Does he pit at the end of this one? Piastri, Norris, Verstappen still our top three. Carlos Sainz looking for a 4th place finish. Is a brilliant weekend from the Spaniard. And Piastri being asked to push and get closer to a 124. Piastri struggling. The problem is, like, still got 16 laps left to go. If he goes on to a set of soft compound tyres, will they last for 15 laps at the pace that Piastri wants to go? I mean, most likely they are going to be on lower fuel than they were at the start of the Grand Prix. We did see some cars on the soft compound tyre at the beginning of the race. They were obviously going to go for a slightly longer stint than 10 laps or so, but we have to wait and see. And, Isaac Hadjar and George Russell having a little battle with one another. In fact, Fernando Alonso has dropped down a couple of places. I mean, I appreciate that they're showing Piastri and Verstappen and so on, but we are also missing some overtakes. I didn't realize that Fernando Alonso has dropped down to 8th place in all of this. And Piastri pits. Piastri does indeed come in. The McLaren team are out. It is going to be soft compound tyres by the looks of things. They are onto his car. No, they are hard compound tyres onto Oscar Piastri's car. So Lando Norris now takes the lead of this race. Ollie Behrman is just coming down the start-finish line, but Behrman has pitted, so has gotten out of the way. So Piastri will likely come out in front of Carlos Sainz. Had more than enough of a gap. Did indeed. Verstappen on the radio. It's Oscar who's pitted early, and Oscar is looking to chase you down now. So Verstappen is being told the chase is on. Carlos Sainz is actually only 21 seconds behind Lando Norris and actually 24 seconds to Antonelli. The gap that Lando Norris had to the rest has completely disintegrated. And Lando Norris's pace has not been anywhere close to what I was expecting from him. Lando Norris might actually slot in behind Sainz and Antonelli towards the end of this race, which would be an absolute disaster. He'd then have to try and overtake them out on track. Of course, he would have much fresher tyres than the Williams and the Mercedes car, but it's just a little bit more awkward for Lando and something that he's probably didn't want to have to deal with. So Lando is not in a very good situation at all, as Verstappen has now also got DRS. So actually, Lando Norris giving Verstappen DRS and kind of helping him out a touch. Is Lando Norris hoping for a safety car? Is Lando Norris hoping for something different? I mean, Norris can go another 7 laps on these medium compound tyres. But Lando is continuing on. It's going to be very awkward indeed if you are a Lando Norris fan. It's not a very comfortable place to be in. It was a 1.8 second stop for Oscar Piastri now that I'm seeing the timings come up. Piastri had a vitally quick stop. Got him a good chunk of time ahead of Carlos Sainz in that stop. And gives him lovely clean air to run into. Max Verstappen is 16.5 seconds ahead. So Piastri does need a second a lap on the Red Bull car and also the opportunity to be close enough to overtake. Piastri is running behind Verstappen in this race. Verstappen has the track advantage. Oh, and the tyres are coming out. It's going to be Lando Norris in. Box. Our championship leader gives way to the championship holder. Max Verstappen goes into the lead of this race once again. Lando comes into pit. And let's see, can McLaren do another good stop? Oh, it's a little bit slower than Piastri's, most certainly. It's a 2.7 second stop, though. 2.7 second stop for Lando Norris. Piastri goes by, and Piastri wasn't really the fight for Lando. Norris has fallen well adrift. But there goes Carlos Sainz, and here comes Kimi Antonelli. He is behind the two. I thought he might be. The lap times were not looking good enough from Lando Norris. And Norris has now got 13 laps to save this race. He needs to finish in third. A third place finish is fine. A fifth place finish is not good enough. Antonelli and Carlos Sainz ahead, and the problem is Carlos Sainz is going to be fighting for his life to hold on to a second podium finish is available to Carlos Sainz here this afternoon of the season, and almost certainly guaranteeing himself 9th place in the Drivers' Championship. Here comes Fernando Alonso. What's happened there with the Aston Martin? Oh, a pirouette. Fernando Alonso did a full spin. And that's where Hadjar and Russell got by. We didn't manage to see that. That was on lap 42 of the Grand Prix. And Russell and Hadjar also getting side by side with one another through turn one. And Russell pushed onto the gravel. Isaac Hadjar fighting with George Russell for position. Hadjar 6th, Russell 7th at the moment. Hadjar, though, 17 seconds adrift from Lando Norris, so it's not going to affect the drivers at the front of this after Fernando Alonso held up the pack for so long. It was a pirouette that cost him. Shall we have a little look at the championship then? I said I would have a look at it with you once we had those second pit stops from the McLaren cars. This is what it would look like. Lando Norris, 406. Max Verstappen would move into second place in the championship. He would be 10 points behind Lando Norris. And then another 4 points behind would be Oscar Piastri. So it'd only be 14 points between the top three going into the final race of the season. That's why it's so crucial that Norris bumps this 10 points up to 15. Like, he needs to get himself in that podium place. It is going to be so close between those three. George Russell will stay where he is. Antonelli is actually looking to jump ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and that's why Antonelli will be begging to hold on to that place ahead of Lando Norris, as Lando Norris, I think, has also made another mistake. He has a little wobble from Lando Norris, loses just a couple of tenths or so. Hamilton would drop down to 7th place. Carlos Sainz would jump up 15 points. A second podium finish for Carlos Sainz of the season would see him jump up to 64 points in the standings, and most certainly 5 points ahead of Isaac Hadjar, hold on to 9th place. Ollie Behrman comes in, and Ollie Behrman has actually retired from the Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso would pick up 4 points. Lance Stroll is the final car running inside of the point-scoring places. But this is what it means for the championship right now. Norris, 406. Verstappen, 396. And Piastri, 392. It is so tight at the top of the championship if Lando Norris can't close the 3-second gap that he has to Kimi Antonelli ahead. Antonelli was 0.4 of a second slower last lap. Needs to be more from Lando. Needs to get closer. Lando will catch him, but he needs to catch and pass. Getting underneath the rear wing of the Mercedes car is one thing. Doing the other. And Piastri on the radio, dejected. It's a 23.8 from Verstappen. Piastri knows a 23.3 is nowhere near good enough. Verstappen now leading this race by over 14 seconds with only 10 laps left to run. It is looking like another perfect afternoon from Verstappen and Red Bull. They got that safety car nailed compared to the McLarens, and the McLarens have been punished. Oscar Piastri, more so than anyone, he's been great this weekend. Has to be said, Oscar Piastri has put in every single lap that he's needed. He has been exquisite in both qualifying sessions. He won the sprint race comfortably, but he will go into the final race of the season in third place in the Drivers' Championship if it stands the way it is right now. Sainz is third in this race. Antonelli fourth. Lando Norris has stepped on the gas a little bit there. It's actually closed by a second at that last lap. A 123.1 from Lando Norris. Think he's been given the hurry up by the McLaren team and maybe realizing the substantial nature of this. 10 points ahead of Verstappen is awkward. If he's 12 points ahead of Verstappen, it's a little bit nicer. 15 points ahead of Verstappen going into Abu Dhabi would be even sweeter still. Piastri continues on in second place. He's not going to catch him, and nobody is going to catch Max Verstappen. Verstappen has nailed this. He's been really good. Verstappen, has to be said, his race pace has been perfect. Managed those 25 laps in that middle stint perfectly. And then has been given the go-ahead to push on these hard compound tyres. And again, has just delivered the lap times required. It's a 23.7 from Verstappen, a 23 dead from Oscar Piastri. So again, needs more than a second a lap, Piastri, and is not getting anywhere close to that second margin. Now needs almost 2 seconds a lap, Oscar Piastri, if he's really going to be within striking distance of Verstappen at the end of this. Another win for Verstappen, and he could be second in the championship as it stands. He's done the business, hasn't he, Verstappen? He was behind Oscar Piastri by 104 points. Could go into the final race of the season, leading Piastri by 4 points, but still second in the standings. As we see a big lockup from Kimi Antonelli, I think that was. Antonelli under pressure from Lando Norris now. Norris needs this. Norris really pushing hard inside of that McLaren car. Antonelli a second now ahead of Lando. Lando needs to get himself within that DRS range. I'll tell you what, Lando Norris, these overtakes are going to be crucial. And if Antonelli puts up a bit of a fight, maybe there's a touch between them, this could be an absolute disaster for Lando Norris. So he needs to be careful, needs to make sure that he gets the move done comfortably, and does not want to be doing anything silly alongside Kimi Antonelli into turn one. Let's keep our eyes peeled on it. Lando Norris and Kimi Antonelli now enter the DRS zone. DRS wide open for Lando Norris. Antonelli on the right-hand side of the track moves across, and Lando Norris doesn't judge it this time. Not close enough for Lando Norris. And I think this is the thing, right? Lando Norris, the thing is, it's another 3 seconds to Carlos Sainz. Needs another couple of car lengths closer to Antonelli so that he can actually get alongside him, because he doesn't want to go for a lunge. You know, Oscar Piastri had to risk it earlier on in the Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri had to go for those lunges. But Lando Norris does not. Lance Stroll finally makes his pit stop, which means Liam Lawson actually jumps up into the point-scoring places. Another double point-scoring finish for RB is on the cards in the midfield. Carlos Sainz, though, kind of putting that to shame with a podium finish at play for Williams. Antonelli fourth, Lando Norris fifth as it stands, but within DRS range is the championship leader. As we come towards Oscar Piastri, comes across the line again, is just nowhere near. Max Verstappen's turned up the wick now. I think the key is to open up the gap to Norris now as much as possible, says Carlos Sainz on the radio. He's been given the yes. So Carlos Sainz is also going to be stepping on the gas and pushing his Williams car for the final 7 laps of this Grand Prix. DRS open. Lando Norris, though, Oh, I know that he's too far back, but when do you risk it? When's the roll of the dice going to come from Lando Norris? Not this time around. It is scary. It is very scary. Lando Norris has to be a little bit hesitant here. I mean, to be fair, you know, 12 points in the championship versus 10 points in the championship doesn't... I was going to say doesn't matter too much. It does matter. It does really matter. He needs to get ahead. Carlos Sainz on the radio. I have understeer in the right-hand corners. Carlos Sainz with a problem. I think something fell off. That is going to slow Carlos Sainz down considerably. Carlos Sainz, problems in the Williams car. Lando Norris has been unlucky at times this season, in the Netherlands in particular. Maybe now his luck is coming back to him as Carlos Sainz maybe has an issue. He's got a lot of problems in the right-hand corners. But Kimi Antonelli is also not making this easy. Lando Norris is closer than he has been in the last couple of laps. Round turn 16 they come. Surely this time has to be the time that Lando Norris goes for it. They're on the straight. Kimi Antonelli looks into his wing mirrors. He can see Lando Norris is closer than he's ever been before. The DRS comes open for the McLaren car. Has to have a look up the inside. Doesn't. Lando Norris. I just don't know if he's got the straight line speed in the McLaren, you know. That was as close as he has been coming out of turn 16, as we have seen. Potential damage to the floor on the front. So that is where Carlos Sainz is having problems turning right. It's got a little bit of damage to that Williams car. I'll tell you what could play against Lando Norris here. If Carlos Sainz has got enough damage that Kimi Antonelli starts to get DRS to the Williams car ahead. At the moment, Lando Norris the only car with DRS, and he still can't get by the Mercedes car. If Carlos Sainz has got, or sorry, Kimi Antonelli's got DRS as well, he's got no hope of getting past the Mercedes machinery in front of him. Verstappen has disappeared off into the distance. I think Oscar Piastri has given up the ghost here. Piastri 12.2 seconds behind. Max Verstappen still just isn't able to get any closer to Verstappen. 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths quicker every lap, but nowhere near anything close to the pace that he is required to get within striking distance of Verstappen, or even actually see Max Verstappen on the racetrack, to be honest. Lando Norris now behind Kimi Antonelli again, and doesn't have it again. Antonelli gets into turn 1 fairly comfortably. Lando Norris nowhere near alongside the Mercedes man. I mean, Max Verstappen has played the strategy perfectly. I just feel really bad for Oscar Piastri because he's closed in. He's 12 seconds behind, you know. Had he pitted under the safety car, he would now probably be leading this race. I think they just got it wrong and Verstappen got it right. But when you're leading the race, it's so hard to judge because whatever Piastri did, Verstappen was probably going to do the opposite, and McLaren got it wrong. Red Bull got it right. How many times do we say Red Bull got it right? They always seem to, with Max Verstappen at the helm. And Piastri will drop behind Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship as well. It'll be a 10-point gap between Norris and Verstappen. And it'll be a 4-point gap between Verstappen and Piastri. 14 points separating the top 3 drivers in the championship going into Abu Dhabi. And it looks like that's what it's going to be, as again, Lando Norris comes around turn 16. And again, Kimi Antonelli has him at arm's length. He is not within that sort of half a second margin that you need to strike out of the car ahead. Carlos Sainz is also losing a little bit of time, but not substantially. Kimi Antonelli still 1.5 seconds behind. So Carlos Sainz managing that Williams car perfectly. And at the moment, Isaac Hadjar would finish in 6th place, George Russell in 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th, Charles Leclerc 9th, and Liam Lawson 10th. I'll tell you what, Lando Norris can go and shake Fernando Alonso's hand at the end of this Grand Prix, because it could have been so much worse for Lando Norris, but Fernando Alonso basically slowing down the entire grid by a pit stop's worth of time in that middle stint. And Lando Norris, 0.8 seconds off Kimi Antonelli as they come through the middle sector once again. Carlos Sainz, 1.5 seconds ahead of the Italian. And Carlos Sainz, we've seen him actually do this in Singapore. Was it a couple of years ago, maybe? Where Carlos Sainz kind of kept Lando Norris within DRS to hold on to the victory there. Carlos Sainz might be able to just about keep Antonelli within DRS range here because Antonelli is getting about close enough. Antonelli 1.2 seconds now behind the Williams of Carlos Sainz. So Lando Norris still not able to get past. They go through turn 1 again. And Charles Leclerc asking to the floor of that Ferrari car to be checked. He went wide at turn 14. Haven't seen any track limits infringement penalties given. Albon and Russell the closest. True lack 2 track limits infringements from each of those, but they are the only black and white flags. No penalties have been given out as of yet. Lando Norris is closing in on Antonelli still, but it's 0.7 seconds. Needs to be 0.5 as they come through this final sector, really. Just not able to do it. Antonelli 1.3 seconds behind Sainz as well. Piastri now 10 seconds behind Verstappen, but has given up on any opportunity. Verstappen now making his way. Oh! And it's Isaac Hadjar with a problem with 2 laps to go. Isaac Hadjar has dropped behind Russell, Alonso, now Leclerc. And that Racing Bull, he's got a puncture. He's got a puncture. We knew it was going to be a problem. Some of these cars getting towards that 25-lap stint, and Isaac Hadjar has just pushed his Racing Bull too far. That means Yuki Tsunoda jumps up into the point-scoring places. Liam Lawson also gains a position, and Isaac Hadjar is going to have to limp that Red Bull car home. Are we going to see a virtual safety car or something of the like? Just being a little bit careful. Lewis Hamilton makes his way past Isaac Hadjar now. Hadjar limping around turn 10 towards turn 11. Norris still not past Kimi Antonelli through that first lap, so he's got one more shot at it. There's one more lap left to go. Max Verstappen just makes his way past a slow-moving Isaac Hadjar. Needs to be a bit careful, and is passed fairly comfortably. Verstappen still leading this race by 9.5 seconds to Piastri in second, Carlos Sainz third, Antonelli fourth. Russell up to 6th now, Alonso 7th, Leclerc 8th, Lawson and Tsunoda up into the point-scoring places, gaining because of Behrman's slow pit stop. And Lando Norris is going to try and make a move on Antonelli, and does. Antonelli made a little mistake, Lando Norris opportunistic, and that could be huge. Lando Norris up into 14th place, and that will be 2 very precious points for Lando Norris. Could maybe even have a look at Carlos Sainz here in this final lap. Carlos Sainz is 1.5 seconds ahead. Can he absolutely smash this final lap? We've seen last lap Lando before. This is a crucial last lap for Lando Norris's championship hopes. And Kimi Antonelli, his tyres have just fallen off a cliff as we see Max Verstappen comfortably sauntering around the middle sector. Can Lando Norris do it again? Just caught Antonelli sleeping a little bit. Antonelli made a tiny mistake. Hadjar has made his way back into the pits, so there's going to be no safety car or anything from him. Lando Norris up into 4th place, a second behind Carlos Sainz. Closing in the gap, though, through the first sector. Going to be the final couple of corners where Lando Norris might be able to just make a lunge. Unlikely, though. Verstappen around the final couple of corners. And Kimi Antonelli possibly pulled over and let Norris through, he's saying. Verstappen celebrates another victory. 3 victories in a row now for Max Verstappen. Stunning from him. Lando Norris still behind Carlos Sainz. Oscar Piastri comes across the start-finish line to guarantee himself second, and Carlos Sainz is going to get a podium place. It is Carlos Sainz just ahead of Lando Norris to take 3rd spot. Lando Norris takes 4th. Antonelli a distant 5th. Antonelli's just fallen off a cliff at the end there by the looks of things in terms of race pace. He's 5th fastest, and then George Russell almost an age behind. 20-second gap between Antonelli and Russell in 6th place. Fernando Alonso will come home in 7th after some shenanigans from the Spaniard. He's actually come out fairly good. 7th place for Fernando, 8th place for Charles Leclerc, 9th place for Liam Lawson, 10th place for Yuki Tsunoda. Heartbreak for Isaac Hadjar, who was inside of the point-scoring places the entire race, and Ollie Behrman as well, it has to be said. Ollie Behrman looking at a 10th place finish in his Haas until a bad pit stop came about for him. But that is how our top 10 looks. Lawson and Tsunoda guaranteed themselves some points. And let's take a tiny little look at the championship board at the end of this Grand Prix then. Lando Norris does still lead, and those 2 points could be crucial. He now leads by 12 points to Max Verstappen behind on 396. Oscar Piastri does drop to 3rd place in the drivers' standings, 392. I think Piastri was the quickest driver all weekend. I feel a bit bad for Oscar Piastri there. Just got outplayed by a Max Verstappen strategy masterclass from Red Bull. Russell gains 8 points. Leclerc gains 4. Antonelli only gains 10 now, so is 2 points adrift of Lewis Hamilton. So could steal 6th place in the final race of the season. Alex Albon, no points for him, but 73. 64 for Carlos Sainz. He jumps up into 9th place in the standings and looks comfortably ahead of Isaac Hadjar. 13 points now, the gap for 9th place. And that is a really, really incredible drive from Carlos Sainz and a brilliant second half of the season from him in that Williams car. They have been by far and away the 5th best team of the season and by far and away the best of the rest drivers of the campaign. Feel a little bit for Isaac Hadjar there. He does drop down to 10th place. Hulkenberg also drops down to 11th. And then Yuki Tsunoda gaining a point moves himself out of the 32 club and into the 33 club. Yuki Tsunoda up into 15th place in the standings. Mercedes also making sure that they pretty much lock in 2nd place in the constructors' standings. Red Bull also very likely to guarantee themselves 3rd place, although not mathematically impossible that Ferrari could make up a position or Red Bull could make up a position. Likely that the top 5 will be locked in now. Racing Bulls also with Liam Lawson picking up a couple of points, at least make 6th place pretty much locked in. Aston Martin have also kept Haas and Sauber now at arm's length, with Fernando Alonso picking up those 6 points. Aston Martin very likely to finish 7th in the constructors. But that is where it stands. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be live in a few minutes time for the members only post-race show. And I've got lots of videos coming at you this week before Abu Dhabi. 12 points the gap. Another 4 to Piastri. Anything could happen in Abu Dhabi. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, you should be subscribed now so that you don't miss it. If I don't see you before, I'll see you in a week's time where we will find out which of those 3 drivers will be crowned the 2025 Formula One World Champion. I'll see you there.